Virtual racing comes to Arlington, Virginia today for the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, the Clarendon Cup. With Frankie Andreu, I'm Brad Soner for our second day of virtual racing this weekend in the Echelon Racing League. Frankie, after the Bucks County Classic yesterday, the Armed Forces Cycling Classic today, 2 special days of American racing. Can't say enough how cool it is to be able to get together with people like you and at least have some semblance of normalcy here in 2020.
Yeah, it's nice having the races and the riders being able to participate in an event, let it be virtual. But Clarendon Cup, a difficult race, started way back in 1998. It's been a huge part of the American calendar, and for good reason, bringing top-level talent. And it's fast, the distance sets us apart, and the intensity. And I'm sure it's not going to be any different today for the virtual race.
We're going to talk about some of that talent in the field and the course here in just a bit. Before we do that, let's go back to yesterday for the Bucks County Classic, the Doylestown Criterium course. Starting with the pro women here, Frankie, it was a nail-biter all the way to the line as we saw this group. It came down to about 10, maybe 15 riders. Then it was a last-minute flyer by Christy Tracy. This one took some guts for Tracy to try to go to the line. She didn't quite make it, but you had to respect this effort yesterday.
No, an incredible ride when Christy Tracy struck out. And for a lot of the riders, a little bit of a learning curve dealing with how to handle these turns to be able to save those watts for the end. But Christy Tracy, when she went, huge power numbers. And actually, I thought she was going to be able to get it. But man, Jacqueline Godby, how strong is she to be able to time this sprint perfectly to come by Tracy just in the final meters?
Yeah, I thought Christy Tracy had it going to the line, and I think a lot of people in the group did as well. It came down to inside the last 100 meters before Tracy got caught, and you can see the group behind all staying together. They did a really nice job of kind of working together to try to bring Christy Tracy back. But, she took the gamble, she took the risk. It didn't pay off for her. She got caught at 43 meters to go to the line. That's a heartbreaking day for any bike racer out there, Frankie, but that's also part of the sport. It's the highs and lows of the sport. Definitely a tough day for Christy Tracy yesterday, but she held on for third, so not a bad day out there. Despite getting caught at the line, still ends up with a third-place finish. And here's your series standings after yesterday's race. Jackie Godby widening her lead over Elena O'Mara as she moves to 158 on the points table. Chris Doble-Hickok sitting in third place with Stephanie Sidlick in fourth. Eleanor Wiseman holding on to fifth place for the Amy D Foundation. Christy Tracy drops down to sixth place with her third place finish yesterday. Megan Easler has had a solid ride in the Echelon Racing League so far for Project Echelon, sitting in seventh. And then another Amy D rider, Maddie Ward, in eighth with Morgan Chafin in ninth. And then Angie Bonacisi slipping into the top 10 for the Velocity Vixen team. All right, Frankie, let's get to course profile for today, because this is another really unique American Criterium course at the Clarendon Cup. This one goes all the way back to 1998, first time we saw this course, and it's a legendary course, Frankie. They call it the race of 500 turns for the pro men, 100 laps around the 1K course. They're doing a little shorter of that, half the distance here on the virtual platform at 50 laps.
Yeah, but it's still going to be just as intense, and it was known for the 100K race that it is. It's a fantastic race, but through that start-finish line, a little bit gradual uphill around to turn number 1, and that's almost like a hairpin, going completely around, going around turns number 2 and 3 relatively fast, a little bit of a downhill going into turn 4. And the final turn normally is where we see some of the crashes with the fighting for position before they have that uphill drag towards the finish, but it is going to be flat out for sure.
Well, one rider in this race has won this race in real life before. That's Lauren Stevens of the Tibco SVB team. Winner of this race back in 2015, but also a pretty impressive virtual racer in her own right. She took a stage at the Virtual Tour de France this year. She was on our Esports Worlds team, best place American there, where she took fourth place. So Lauren Stevens and Tibco SVB definitely going to be one to watch. Now, Frankie, she is a new addition to the Echelon Racing League series. So just joining this weekend for the Bucks County Classic and the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. She saw these 2 great races and said, got to get in on some of this. Now, Lauren ended up second place yesterday. Can she finally beat Jackie Godby today? Do you think Lauren Stevens might be able to get it right and try and figure out how to beat Godby here?
Well, she's a time trialist, and so she's got the power numbers to be able to do it. It's just a matter of handling the criterium and the coasting and accelerating around those turns. But we saw Christy Tracy try to take it to Godby yesterday. Godby, last 4 races has 4 wins. So I think we're going to see some aggressive racing. And Lauren Stevens also has a team with her. It's not just her and that Tibco team. So perhaps a little bit counterattacking and some teamwork could play into their favor.
Yeah, teamwork is going to be a major part of it today. We saw that with Team Infinite yesterday, and EVOC Bike Squad on the men's side also had a really great show of teamwork. We're kind of learning about this virtual racing as it goes. It's new to a lot of people, us included, so it's been kind of interesting to watch how this plays out, learning the new tactics, learning the different ways to race. One thing we've learned, Frankie, it is not the same as road racing. Very different in the virtual world than the way that you have to race in the real life world. Some riders have figured it out. Some riders, it doesn't really translate.
Yeah, and what's interesting is talking to the riders and how different it is racing a criterium in the virtual world compared to racing in the virtual world. And so just like, you have specialists, criterium specialists, road race specialists, kind of the virtual world is a little bit turning into that. And so you have to be able to balance out that power and being able to go flat out, but also with the strategy of sitting in, taking advantage of the draft, which is very, very important, and obviously timing that sprint at the end. So when you put the power to the pedals, the watts are going to kick in at the right moment, and you'll be able to get to that line first. And we've seen Godby has this mastered so far.
Well, we are just about 3 minutes away from our pro women's race, first race of the day. Before we do that, I want to bring in race director Rob Laybourne, see if we can grab a word before riders get underway. Now, normally you never want to talk to the race director 3 minutes before the start of a race. That is almost never a good time to try to get an interview with the race director. Rob's trying to frame up here in our virtual world. Rob, this is a much different way to start a race in the virtual world than it is in real life, yeah?
Yes, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. I'm glad you guys got me framed in my. Where am I supposed to go? One more time here. There. This sure beats trying to get on the race course myself and race it. So I'm glad I'm just sitting here behind the screen enjoying what you guys are doing.
Frankie, you had raced this race before, going way, way back in the way back machine, but is it any different here on the virtual day? I mean, certainly a different experience in virtual racing.
Yeah, I think it'll be a different experience, but the intensity and how hard it is racing it in real life, I think, is definitely going to translate over to the virtual world. I mean, RGT's done a great job with this platform and being able to kind of mimic the course. And so the riders are going to feel the turns and they're going to feel that gradual uphill through the start finish line. A lot of that is going to translate over. And so should be an exciting race.
Yeah, Rob, what would you say is the hallmark part of this Clarendon course? I mean, what sort of defines this race, defines the Clarendon Cup course?
I think I was just thinking about it this morning, actually, and it's, this event has just sort of grown and built organically over the years. And so it just, the athletes that have participated, the champions, guys like Frankie that did this back in 2000, every year we're getting national champions to not only compete, but to win. So the competition has just always been, we've been very, very honored to have, such a deep field. The need for the athletes to know how to handle their bike, as well as having the endurance to complete 100 laps. That's not a typical American crit course. The 90-minute distance is kind of more traditional. And then it's right in the downtown heart of Arlington, Virginia, a big suburb of the DC area. So, there's a lot of components that have come together that we've, again, been very fortunate to see the event grow and build over the years.
All right, well, we are just about 30 seconds to race start now here. So, Rob, I'm going to request that you go grab a nice beverage, hot or cold, your choice, sit back and enjoy the race.
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Frankie, let's talk about this course. We talked about the way that these races start. It's very fast from the gun. I mean, the power files, when we look at them, have these huge spikes at the start and at the finish. So pretty much everyone red lines here. Just a couple seconds before the start, you'll see everyone start to get out of the saddle. Here they go as we start the countdown, and they're underway in racing. So the start is huge, a major push for these riders, and we're underway at the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, the start's critical, and as you just mentioned, everybody getting out of the saddle to make sure that they're going to be able to stay up in that front group, and that's kind of the key. It doesn't matter, you can't really, honestly, you can't go too hard at the start. You need to get out of the saddle. You need to kind of get up there, make sure you're going to be in that front. You don't get gapped off because chasing on is just too difficult. And you can see Godby immediately coasting coming into that turn number 1 as they're underway. So big numbers coming out, 6 watts, right around 6 watts per kilogram. So, that's some pretty big numbers from a lot of the riders. And it's going to be interesting to watch Godby with her high cadence if she's able to continue that through today's race, because for a lot of these riders, yesterday was a hard race. They're going to be feeling the fatigue from racing Doylestown. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the distance that they're tackling today at about 38 kilometers per hour for the Armed Forces Classic here in Clarendon.
I saw Godby sitting on the front there early on, had me worried that these riders are going to be chasing Godby all day, but she comes back in. A lot of this is just trying to kind of figure out the rhythm and flow of the race, so I don't think Godby wants to try to break away this early. Now, by the way, Godby is not wearing her team kit because she wears the leader's jersey as the series leader of the Echelon Racing League. She has that kind of pinkish red jersey, so she'll be easy to spot in the group, normally riding with the Triple X Atletico team out of Chicago, Illinois. She also rode with Team USA for a while, representing the United States at the Esports World Championships. A great honor to have her in the Stars and Stripes, and picked up, I think, 5th place there, just behind Lauren Stevens. So the American women were awesome at the Esports World Championships. Really, really impressive. All right, 48K to go here, Frankie. As we've seen in most of these criteriums, there's not a whole lot that happens on the front early on. For a lot of riders, just about trying to hang on to the back. So we're going to be watching riders try to just kind of stay in the group. You think there's a chance of a breakaway today? In real life at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, the Clarendon Cup, there's almost always a group that laps the field. Does that happen today, or do you think that goes away with virtual racing here?
That would be impressive to be able to see a group be able to lap the field. I think tentatively it goes away, but getting into that last 10 or 15 kilometers, the effort is just going to wear on riders. Also, they're going to have the fatigue from yesterday. So I could see a group, maybe 2 or 3 riders going away. Godby, obviously, in her time trial mode, riding on the front. The beginning is just a matter of staying in good position and staying out of trouble, but also it's that advantage of coming into the turn and being able to coast and then accelerate kind of on your own terms compared to trying to keep up when you're in the back. And as you just mentioned, Brad, watching the back of this group is going to be just as interesting as watching the front of the group.
We talked about some of the riders in this field having done this race before. I think Krista Doble-Hickok has been there before, but I cannot wait to see a rider like Jackie Godby or Christy Tracy on this course in real life, because the power that we see them putting in RGT is really amazing, and it'll be really interesting to see if that translates to, hopefully see if that translates to some of these real-life races soon. I want to go back to last year at this race where Kendall Ryan was the winner also of the Tibco SVB team at the time. It was an awesome race where once again a group went away and lapped the field, but she took us through the last lap.
From 7th place up to 1st place in one corner. The race really started in the last 2 corners because you made significant moves in the last 2 corners. But take me through the thinking here when you see this inside line. Do you know you have it as soon as you enter the apex? I mean, do you know that you're going to be able to clean this line?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, this is a whole shot, and then I just stood out of the corner. But yeah, everyone was taking that corner pretty wide, so I just snuck underneath, and yeah, I mean, it's really a shame that she went down in that corner. But yeah, I mean, we're taking it pretty hot, and everyone's on edge, and everyone's heart's in their throat. So it's yeah, I guess I just had to take my chance. But yeah, it's kind of what you do in bike racing: take chances, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Tell me about that feeling when you finally round the turn and you see open road ahead of you, and you've got the line, you've made the move, you're exactly where you want to be, and now you just let your natural talent take over. When do you know you have a sprint like this? I mean, is it all the way to the line, or can you tell a few meters out that you might have this?
I think when I was passing the wheel pit and Rachel was there screaming like, ah! Like all crazy, I was like, oh, I got it, and then I look over my shoulder and I saw daylight. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Rachel, for you as a director, there's not much that you can do in the last lap. I mean, the plan has been executed. It's just up to the riders. What's that like, waiting on the finish line, watching that last turn to see the riders come around?
The last few laps is the most nervous I ever am in a race, especially in a race like this when you know that you've got a rider who really is a favourite for the win. It's all about watching that last corner and seeing where the rider comes out of that final corner. It's definitely a nerve-wracking few minutes.
I love this course, Frankie, and that last turn is always an interesting one. There's kind of two elements to it. One, what group is going to get away? There's almost always a group that's able to get away, mostly just because the race is so long. And then that group always races out of the last turn, and there are always heavy hitters in this field. So one of my favorite races to look forward to. And I like that it's a unique course, too. It's got that the kind of not off-camber, but off-angle turn just across from the start-finish line, so you get to watch them a few times each lap in person.
Yeah, and it's kind of like almost like I don't want to say a figure eight, but almost like a figure eight. So for spectators, to be able to see him coming down on one side and then coming back up on the other side. So lots of viewing angles to be able to watch the riders. And so it's a unique event. And, Rob Laybourne, with the promoter of the event, does a fantastic job in making sure that everybody's treated right, that the event is organized, that it's on time, all the logistics are correct. And as you know, Brad, with all the events that you go to, that plays a big part in making it a nice event, a hospitable event for the riders and the spectators, that things are organized and go off in a timely fashion.
My favorite part about the race, they do the Crystal Cup, which is the race on Sunday. The Clarendon Cup happens on Saturday, and then they go to Crystal City on Sunday for the Crystal Cup. And the hotel is on the course. There are not many races out there where you get to hit the Starbucks in the hotel lobby and then roll straight out to the course. So that's always one I look forward to.
The less walking for you, the better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Crystal City first, then Clarendon on Sunday.
And normally, while you're sitting there sleeping and getting your Starbucks, I've gone out and done the Armed Forces, the cycling challenge, which is a blast. I've had a great time the last 2 years that I've done it, with hundreds of riders out there flying up and down along the boulevard. And so it's kind of a great community event to be able to bring in a lot of cyclists that aren't racers, kind of get that racing feeling on the course and be able to ride. And so a ton of fun as it leads into the pro races.
Yeah, and we do plan on being back in person for the Armed Forces Challenge Ride next year, June 5th, 2021. The date's there. You can register at cyclingclassic.org. We have thousands of people come out and ride that one at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. And Frankie, as you said, they get to shut down these roads. It's pretty amazing that they have these freeways. You go by the Pentagon, by the Air Force Memorial. It's pretty amazing to be able to get those roads shut down. And the Peugeot guy always shows up. He's always one of my favorites at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, it's fun seeing some of the old school bikes or the old school jerseys, or somebody pulling a bugger or being on a tandem. And that's what's great. It's open. Everybody can come out. You just got to sign up for the challenge, and it's a great time. And you can see, Rob can control a lot of things. He can't control the weather, but generally it's been sunny, and it's a fun time, and everybody's very kind of inviting, opening, receptive, and they're all helping each other out, kind of cruising along up and down those boulevards. A ton of fun.
Always a blast. Hope to see more people out there riding. I had almost 2,000 people, I think over 2,000 riders last year. So we'll see if we can get that up this year. And then the kids' races, we're going to talk about that later. That's a whole nother element of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. Frankie, picking up the action here. Group has shredded a little bit, but all the heavy hitters there. It looks like we're down to 12, maybe 13 riders in this group. And this was because of Jackie Godby riding on the front. There's no way around it. Godby is punishing the riders in this group. She wants to split it up as much as she can, hoping she can catch some riders off guard. So once again, Jackie Godby is taking control of this one early at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, Godby's just keeping the pressure on. She's the hammer, and she just keeps hitting the nail, and it's sinking further and further, and riders getting dropped. Like Newsom is struggling a little bit, not in the draft, and kind of, flailing back there, trying to be able to stay in and trying to figure out how to be able to control the power output with being able to not have that braking sort of enforced when you come into the corners. And that's a fine line that many of them are trying to figure out. But Godby keeping it steady. But as you had mentioned, Brad, group has dwindled. 35 riders on the start line. We're down to maybe 12 to 13 right now. And in the back, there's a lot of swingers. And so I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be able to stay there. And Alana O'Mara, super strong rider, not enjoying this criterium atmosphere.
Yeah, you know it's tough when O'Mara is off the back. Look how she's staying in the red zone right here. This is a massive effort. You see the red line under her name. That means she's pretty much at the peak of what she can do. The game processes the data that the riders put in and kind of knows the range that they're capable of. And those colors respond to each rider's individual range. So I think she's going to get back in. Looked like she was about to tack on, but that is a massive effort. See, Chris Doble-Hickok has to do it as well. She's closing the gap because Jackie Godby is once again putting the pressure on up at the front. Oy, oy, oy.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I mean, that was 7.5 watts per kilogram. You can only do that so many times. And so O'Mara is just trying to be able to stay connected. But, Godby, as she continues to push the pace, you can see a lot of, yesterday we saw a few times a lot of yellow and green. And we're seeing earlier on in this race a lot more red sparking up. But one team that's doing pretty good there, it seems like there's a bit more of the Tibco riders have kind of figured this virtual thing out, being able to be there to be able to help Lauren Stevens. I mean, some of the, Diana Panuela, Emily Newsom, Emma Langley, and Kristen Faulkner, all good road riders, good criterium riders. And so they're new to the virtual world, and it looks like they're starting to kind of get a handle on this and being able to stay up there in that front group so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, trying to figure out how this whole virtual racing thing works, and the criterium element is its own sort of part of it. The game slows these riders down as they go into the corners, and so it's a lot more explosive riding. It's much more like interval training than anything, whereas the criterium in real life, I think it's a little easier to try to carry some of that speed through. You get a few more breaks here and there out on the road in real life, but the virtual course really punishes you, so you just have to stay on the gas the entire time. See, Jackie Godby starting to show her effort a little bit here now. Godby is notoriously a high cadence rider. She just loves to spin those pedals. She's not a big gear rider like someone like Chris Doble-Hickok, who will usually push a slower cadence with a bigger gear. Just like in real life, Frankie, it just comes down to preference, I think, for these riders. Some riders have a bigger anaerobic system, and some riders would rather leverage their muscles rather than try and put it on the heart and lungs.
Yeah, and you could see that Godby was breathing pretty heavily, 5 watts per kilogram. She's putting out a big effort right now. In that last screen, you could see, the heavy breathing. I mean, definitely putting in a big effort. Wasn't taking it easy by any means. And so Lauren Stevens starting to react to this. Faulkner, her teammate, also reacting to this, not really trying to prevent Godby from going away. And so, even with 40 kilometers to go, I would say, this is a critical point in the race that's taking place right now.
Riders starting to suffer early on here. That is Mallory McCrosty down in the bottom right, Jackie Godby in the bottom left. That is Chris Doble-Hickok up in the top right. And then some more riders from our Zoom room up in the top left there, bouncing around.
Well, nice job by the group to be able to react to Godby being able to get back. Crystal Doble-Hickok doing a fantastic job. I mean, normally a climber. I mean, her lightweight frame, the way she can go up the mountains, she's able to kind of defy gravity. And that's one thing, on some of the climbing days or little uphills, you're not really dealing with gravity. You're dealing with the percentage grade. And so a little bit more of a disadvantage for a lighter weight rider like Doble-Hickok. But Ward is doing a fantastic job. Like I mentioned, a few more Tibco riders have been able to get in here. I've seen McCrosty still doing a good job of staying in here, and she was second at the Gila criterium, and so she's going to be looking to be able to put in a good ride today. So group is dwindling. You see already lapping some riders here, but this is kind of good for the riders that are even lapped because they're going to have their own little race. And so, it's not all lost, and you're not pulled. That's one thing about virtual racing. You're not going to get pulled because you get lapped. You can have those 6 riders in front can still do their own kind of race and be able to fight for points.
As much as some riders would like to get pulled when they go off the back of this one, they do keep them in as long as they can. So you'll see some riders kind of floating around the course out here in the virtual world. Those are usually lapped riders, but they do continue the race. Another plug for T-shirts and hats in the We Are Nations Echelon Racing League store. We are still working on Frankie's line of merchandise, but until then, you can check out all the teams. Everyone has gear in the team store and cheer on your favorite riders or favorite teams. So if you're tuning in to watch someone today, head over to wearenations.com and get some gear from your official squad. Frankie, you said you were looking at the Hugh Dog Racing logo yesterday. That was the one you connected with.
That's the one that caught my eye. Hugh Dog, and then also was it Return, or I'm trying to remember what the other one was. But yeah, there's some
Restart
colorful designs
Racing,
on it.
I guess.
That's what it was, the Restart Racing. I kind of like that logo also. So those two are the ones that caught my eye by looking on that. But ton of great designs, and I think it's pretty neat to be able to have those T-shirts that represent the teams that you can show your support for the cyclists that are out here.
And teams get a little cut of that proceeds as well, so put some money in their pockets at the same time. All right, Godby back on the front. They brought this down to, I think, 9 riders, because I'm pretty sure Maddie Ward is the last rider in this group at 9, as they just catch a few riders. They're going to work their way through. This group got a lot smaller, a lot quicker than it did yesterday, Frankie. You think maybe the big riders realized that they could put a little more pressure on the group here? Yesterday, at this point, they still had like 15, maybe 20 riders, but this is down to right around 10 right now.
I think the start was a little bit more furious, and this is a little bit more, Doylestown is a longer circuit, so it had more corners, but the corners are quicker and they come at you much faster than what we saw yesterday, and I think that could be having a little bit of effect on how the riders are tackling this course. But Godby's just, in steady rhythm. You can see her breathing, and even though she's going hard, she just keeps pushing at 4.95 watts per kilogram. That's huge power numbers that's coming out of her, and everybody else is just responding to that, trying to stay in that draft. Looks like a nice, I can't say a nice attack, because what's happening is they're coming out of the corners, and Brad, as you had talked about, hard to meter that power wattage on how much you need to be able to just stay in the draft compared to just automatically going straight to the front, and that's exactly what's happening with a lot of the riders. But there's maybe 10 riders here right now, and this is going to be probably cut in half by the time we get down to the finish.
Yeah, trying to look at the team jerseys in here just to see what the team situation is. I see a couple, I think there's 3 Tibco jerseys in here. I just saw Lauren Stevens rolling by. They're saying 10 riders in this group, but I'm almost sure I saw 3 of those Tibco jerseys. We'll keep an eye on that. Might have been the U.S. national team jerseys as well. They kind of both have the stripes in there. I see Newsom in there. We know Stevens. Yeah, so that must be all three Tibco riders.
Yeah, I think there's 3 Tibco. There's a couple Amy D Foundation riders, and obviously with Godby being one of them. And so, yeah, it's be interesting to see on how this plays out.
We saw some setup attacks yesterday in the Bucks County Criterium, where riders from Infinite Racing would go off the front, and then they forced Jackie Godby to chase them down, and then Christy Tracy tried to attack over the top of that move after chasing him down. So we'll see if they try to do anything like that today.
Lana O'Mara out of the saddle, kind of going back and forth with repeated efforts in the bottom right-hand part of the screen. And so, yeah, everybody's trying to got their fans on, they're trying to drink. It's a long criterium, and there was a little bit of debate on how long to be able to make this criterium, because it's different than, you can't have you could have 100K mimic exactly what you do outside in real life, virtually on the inside, but that would be torture. I think that'd be a little bit too long. So we're trying to figure out a balance, and the riders all commented and made it kind of clear to Eric Hill from Echelon Sports League that, they want a little bit longer race. They don't want just an hour. They'd like it to be a little bit more, I guess, challenging. And so they're going to get that with the distance. And of course, every time you do a virtual race, the intensity is always there. And that's the hardest part of trying to deal with, because after a while, it's just a matter, your legs just run out of power. You just can't keep up. And that's what's happening as we see these groups continue to dwindle and the numbers keep going down, is that, for 15, 20 minutes, you can, produce 400 watts. But after, that amount of time, your body's you're just not used to it, or you're not fit enough to be able to do that compared to some of the other riders that are able to put out that kind of power.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do in a situation like that. And like you said, I don't think anybody wants to do the full distance of riding there. Here's a look at the 3 TIBCO riders. That's Lauren Stevens up in the top left, and then Kristen Faulkner and Emily Newsom, the other 2 TIBCO riders, down in the bottom right. This is a dangerous trio, Frankie. And they've got 3 of them up in this front group, 3 of the 10 riders for TIBCO SVB. So this might be some new riders to watch. I think Lauren Stevens is starting to figure out the RGT platform. She's going to be very dangerous once she really gets in the rhythm of RGT here. Again, 4th place at the World Championship, so you know she's got some talent, but Jackie Cobby was right behind her in 5th.
Yeah, and Lauren also, perhaps learning a little bit from her experience yesterday, because she was 2nd at the race yesterday with the Doylestown, and so that's gonna play into her favor also. But also having the teammates there, I think, are going to come in handy a little bit later on. All of them very experienced racers, so tactically they already kind of know what to do. If a rider goes up the road and it's not part of their team, they're well organized to know when they have to chase or when they might not have to chase, how to help each other out. The thing that's different with virtual racing that I talked about yesterday is that if you are doing a chase and you have 2 teammates on the front, normally you can sit like in that 3rd position and kind of be protected. And so it's not like that in the virtual world. There's a constant fight for position. You don't really get any leeway. You don't get that free space in order to be able to ride behind your teammates. And so that's very different. And in a way, it's kind of more fun to watch, because everybody's always trying to be able to get to the front, and you keep having that washing machine cycle where it's a constant rotation.
Yeah, and we're probably going to see some of that here as these riders surge back on, and then the riders at the front will let off and sort of come backwards. Frankie, we've been talking about the Echelon Racing League, made up of some of our favorite races here in the United States. We're headed to Gateway Cup next before we head to the Redlands Bicycle Classic and then the virtual Joe Martin stage race. You can find the full schedule at Echelon Racing League, but really all about trying to visit some of the best American races out there and really highlight the great American road racing and criterium racing scene that we have over here in North America. Jackie Godby back off the front. No surprise here as she once again puts the pressure on and puts just a little gap in, just enough to make the riders chase, just enough to make you worry if you're back in that group watching a gap form in front of her. So I think what Godby is trying to do is make these riders use energy on her terms, right? She's saying, okay, I want to surge when I'm feeling good or when I want to go, and kind of forcing the other riders to try to just follow that, to put the ball in her court early on here. And here, Velocity Vixen's maybe going to, I thought they were going to try and go over the top of her here, but they were just surging a little bit.
Yeah, they're just surging. But like you mentioned, perhaps in Godby's mind, being her offensive is the best defense. And so that's what she's doing. She's being aggressive in order to be able to control the rest of the peloton and just keeping that pace high. I'm sure a lot of these riders are waiting for, like, hey, when's the lull going to come? When are we going to be able to recover a little bit? And it just doesn't seem to be coming. 34 kilometers to go, and it's just constantly, they're just reacting and chasing down Godby the entire time. Perfect example of Lauren Stevens on the front right there. It's got a teammate on her wheel also trying to be able to bring this back. Krista Doble-Hickok reacting to it. And so this seems like Godby is just 1-2 punching everybody on every single lap, and they're having to react to it. And so when will that change, or can it change? I mean, when will maybe another rider be able to go on the offensive and perhaps put Godby in a follow chase mode?
Yeah, got to give Christy Tracy credit for yesterday. She tried. I mean, I think she realized what she had to do and kind of realized that you're not going to beat Jackie Godby in just a straight-up drag race to the line, because she can just lay that power down for the 15, 20 seconds that she needs, and no one can really beat her there. So she's really trying to find a different way to win, find her own way to try to beat Jackie Godby here.
Yeah, and it was also very interesting in the interview that you did, Brad, yesterday with Godby about talking about, because these events are like an hour and a half long, very intense, high watts, about her calorie intake, and so that was kind of different also compared to if you went out and rode for an hour and a half, you wouldn't have to eat anything. But she really was specific about talking about the sugars and the intake that she needs to be able to bring into her body in order to be able to get through a race like this.
Yeah, talking about trying to fuel, which is one of the toughest parts of riding or training, and certainly indoor racing. I think the riders, they seem like they're in a worse place. Like they go deeper in indoor racing than I really ever see them, it seems like, go on the road. Part of that is just because they're on the trainer. You know, we don't normally get video of the riders on the trainer, but man, it just seems like they go so deep in this virtual racing. Like they're just cracked in a way that you very rarely see out on the road.
Well, it's similar to if you had an hour time trial and how deep you could go in a time trial. And, you know, at the end, you can barely stand up. And that's kind of the situation here. Like this is, you know, it's not a time trial, but it's flat out for an hour, hour 15, hour 20, where the intensity is just high and there's never a lull because you can't just sit on the wheels. You can't enjoy the draft. You can't sit in a small gear and just kind of get pulled along. And that doesn't exist in the virtual world of getting pulled along. So you always have to put out that power. And I agree with you. You know, you get wiped out after doing some of these virtual races. But Godby, you can see, you know, just keeping it steady. You saw her just shifting into maybe a higher gear or lower gear. But the breathing is very consistent with her. You can see her stomach going in and out. She is definitely working hard and keeping the pressure and the pace on. She doesn't want this race to slow down because she feels it's to her advantage to keep going harder as she just went into a larger gear right there.
Yeah, she talked about trying to focus yesterday, kind of focus on her breathing, focus on her anaerobic capacity, and focus on the game, too. That was another thing that I noticed yesterday, how intently they were staring at the screens, just watching the game to try to modulate their power and make sure that they were as smooth as possible and efficient as possible in the game. Wow, she is continuing to gap this group, and they are not taking it lightly. Double Hickok was just in the red up at the front. Lauren Stevens is bringing some reinforcements up here as well. So the alarm bells were ringing right now for Jackie Godby as Godby tries to take it to him even earlier than yesterday. I love this riding by Jackie Godby today.
Super aggressive, and as you just mentioned, a lot of riders going into the red trying to react to Godby. In the back also, there, you know, Sidlick was just in the red just trying to be able to stay with the group. So you're having a lot of pain and suffering on the front part of the group and a lot of pain and suffering on the back part of the group as Godby is just sitting out of tempo. She's just a master class in time trialing, and that's exactly what she's doing despite this being a criterium. She's just being very consistent with her power output, sitting right at about 4.7 watts per kilogram.
Yeah, I mean, look at the difference in the way that they're riding. It just looks significantly different.
Yeah, Lauren Stevens, you know, a little bit bigger gear, but looks very relaxed and comfortable as Godby looks like she's, it's a bigger effort. It seems like it's coming from Godby. And so Stevens maybe realizing the distance and how much longer there is to go and maybe relying on the rest of the group to be able to keep that chase and not let Godby get too big of a gap. But this is what's happening as Godby is gradually starting to expand that lead, and that's where it's going to become a little bit dangerous. I mean, Brad, do you allow Godby to be able to get out there and hang out there and think that she might, you know, blow up a little bit later on? That's a roll of the dice in my mind.
That's what I was just thinking. That's like the biggest gamble to call Jackie Godby's bluff in this situation and say, yeah, we think you're going to blow up. We think you're coming back. Jackie Godby is not the rider to let do that. There's certain riders that maybe you don't think have that long-range attack, that long-range reach, but Godby absolutely has it. So if I'm in this group, I'm thinking it's about 70-30 that Jackie Godby stays away. I would definitely be chasing this one down. For my money, I'm not playing the waiting game and hoping that she comes back.
Yeah, and that could be a little bit of the advantage that Tibco has is maybe they're going to have to sacrifice some riders to try to get up there to Godby. But one thing to pay attention to is that gap. As you can see next to their names, you know, it was at 50 meters, 80 meters, 90 meters. So we're going to have to kind of pay attention to see, you know, if it's going to get up to 100 meters or more. That means Godby is gradually pulling away. And here there's going to be a little bit cat and mouse game. Obviously points on the line, you know, second, third, and fourth if they decide they're not going to go after Godby because she has shown in the last 4 races she has had 4 victories. And so maybe they're thinking, you know, they don't want to sacrifice themselves and having to be able to do all the work to try to bring back Godby. And it could be a race in the second group. Not necessarily so concerned about Godby right now, but still 30 kilometers remaining. And she's, you know, teeny bit of a downhill, but she's still going 46 kilometers per hour. The speed you have to go to be able to bring back Godby would be, I don't want to say astronomical, but it would be a huge amount of work in order to be able to bring back that 100-meter gap right now.
30K to go now, and Godby is continuing to grow the gap. She's just doubled her gap over the last kilometer here. So, this is bad news for Sidlick, Faulkner, Doble, Hickok, Chafin, Wiseman, Ward, Stevens, all the riders in this group. Going to have to figure out something, because right now Jackie Godby is trying to solo her way in the last 30K here at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. This might be the most realistic iteration of virtual racing that we've had yet, where the way that the race unfolds in the virtual world is so similar to the way that usually unfolds in the real world. Now, normally she would have a group with her. That's not as important on the virtual platform here, but it looks like we might have a rider away here at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic Virtual Edition.
Yeah, one of the rare moments of seeing a breakaway, but I just saw Faulkner right around 9 watts per kilogram. Sidlick was reacting to that at about 7 or 8 watts per kilogram, and so it was a big effort in trying to bring it back. And look, we talked about it being at 100 meters for Jacqueline Godby. That gap is starting, that gap has come down to about 60 or 70 meters, and so Faulkner now has struck out. Again, putting in a huge effort, 6.5 watts per kilogram, trying to bridge the gap to Godby. So Faulkner in no man's land while Godby is in the front, but this is a brilliant move by Team Tibco. This could be setting up Faulkner to be able to latch onto Godby, which he's about to do, but also now Lauren Stevens, if you're allowed to be able to sit on, can sit back a little bit and let some of the other riders react to this situation as they go back up to almost a 100-meter gap.
What a ride for Faulkner here to go across the gap. Now, hopefully she can just sit on here and doesn't have to work too hard with Jackie Godby, but looking pretty fresh. I was watching her Zoom cam as she was trying to go across and really didn't look terrible. So I think she's still got some in the tank. I don't think she's quite up to the red zone yet. She's still got some fuel left in her. So we're going to keep an eye on Faulkner here as she has joined Jackie Godby at the road. Now the question is, who else can go with her? Who else looks at that and says, all right, one rider, maybe not. 2 riders, I can work with them. Let's go. So I think this would be a good time for riders to try to bridge up here. Obviously, easier said than done from my comfortable chair here sitting in front of a computer to tell riders to bridge up. But now's the time, Frankie. I think this gap is only getting bigger from now on.
Yeah, look at the gap that's opened up with the hard part now for Faulkner is going to be how to moderate her watts to be able to sit on the wheel comfortably, to be able to save some energy while going around the turns. And so figuring out that coasting to acceleration to be able to not have to go in front of Godby if Faulkner decides to sit on. Gap is going up, and so this is a fantastic move. First time we've really seen, kind of an established breakaway in this race. But you talked about it earlier, Brad. I mean, the Armed Forces Cycling Classic is known for having breakaways, known for lapping right what's taking place today.
Chafin finding herself in a little bit of trouble here off the back, but looks like she should be able to chase in just fine. There's certainly an element here now, Frankie, of these riders needing to work together. This is not the time to start to attacking off the front or losing your rhythm. There's still an element of needing to be smooth in the game, just like in real life. So these riders can work together. They can cooperate in the group, but right now it is these two against the world as this field tries to figure out what to do about the two up the road. Do you think anyone else can go across the gap here, Frankie? I mean, what are the chances that another rider makes it across?
I think if that gap came down to about 80 meters, maybe somebody could have a chance. But, as it goes up to 100, 120 meters, I mean, Faulkner is an established road rider, super strong. And so she was at 9 watts per kilogram, almost 10 watts per kilogram. It was a massive move for her to be able to get up there. And so, I'm not sure if anybody else is going to be able to make it.
Yeah, this is so huge for Tibco to get her up into this group because remember, they still have the other 2 back in the field, including Lauren Stevens, who right now, there she is just sitting in, saving her energy, biding her time, letting her teammates do the work. Once again, we're seeing some real team tactics here from Tibco. Stevens made a conscious decision to sit back in this group and let her teammate go up the road to do the chasing here. I love the riding from Tibco SVB today.
Yeah, 200-meter gap right now, so that's going to be a massive undertaking for anybody else to get up there. I see 2 riders going away here, and this is going to be Godby and Faulkner just has to figure out how to be able to stay on the wheel. You can see her kind of like a slinky kind of going back and forth, trying to be able to sit on that wheel as Godby just kind of taps out that rhythm. And so Faulkner struggling a little bit about how to kind of recover and stay on the wheel and take advantage of being in the slipstream behind Godby, who just continues to push that pace. But Faulkner just now 6.8, 7 watts per kilogram to try to keep up there. So those are big efforts. And if you're going to keep doing that for another 26 kilometers, you're not going to have much in your tank at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing for Faulkner right now is don't help Jackie Godby. Just sit on. I don't think you ever see Faulkner go to the front here. If she does, it's by accident. It's that overcompensation that we talked about, trying to feather the power of the riders. But this is a perfect setup for Faulkner and Tibco. Now, Faulkner is probably not here to win the race. I think this is a team move, but it's she's got insurance, because if this group does stay away, Faulkner can still try to go to the line with Jackie Godby. So it's really balls in Godby's court. It's up to her to just ride her own race. She's basically riding a time trial here with one rider tacked on to her rear wheel. So it's going to be interesting to watch Jackie Godby in a much different race today than we saw yesterday.
Yeah, Godby continues to keep pushing that pace. Again, her performance at Gila was very impressive, taking all 3 and coming from that pro triathlete background. I mean, she's a professional triathlete since 2012, and you talked about 5th at the eSport World Championships, and so established that she has the strength and the power to be able to pull off something like this. And so her only problem right now is Faulkner, who's sitting on the wheel, and that could be a little bit different dynamic, but we've seen Godby win field sprints, and so she's got to worry about right now with Faulkner. And for Faulkner, this is new, but Faulkner's doing a fantastic job of staying on that wheel, and she's going to be thinking about how to take victory here. Faulkner's not going to settle for second, and so it's going to be interesting to see a little bit later on if she decides to wait for a sprint, or if she'll try to attack and kind of get a gap a little bit earlier on to have to not challenge Godby coming into that finish line.
Here's the chase group behind them. See a lot of greens and blues in there. That's where Lauren Stevens wants to be, just saving her energy. Now, I want you to take a look at the top left of this screen. You can see the drafting indicator at the bottom of this graphic up in the top left. Now, that's what the riders are seeing. So this is Kristen Faulkner's screen. She can choose what view she has, but she's seeing the same data graphics that we see. That tells you how close you are to being in the optimal draft of the rider in front of you. So you can see how it kind of switches from green to red. Now, when a rider's power numbers turn to red, the top left number, it's right around 350 right now. When that goes red, that means that the riders are kind of wasting energy. It means that they've hit the maximum draft that they're going to get out of that group. So Faulkner is going to be constantly watching this data point right here, trying to make sure that she has the maximum draft, maximizing her effort, the most efficient that she can be throughout the day. So just keep an eye on that up in the top left throughout the day, as it'll show you the rider that we're watching and who the next rider that they can try to draft off of. So here's a nice first-person view. This is what it would look like in real life if you were trying to sit on Jackie Godby's wheel. This is an interesting virtual view here.
Yeah, and that drafting's so important, as in real life in the virtual, saving, if you can save, look at that, 160, 170 watts, if you can sit that close to her without going past her, that's a massive difference. I mean, that'd be putting out 400 watts compared to putting out, 300 or 280 watts. That's a big difference in effort as Godby continues to just kind of not slow down. I don't even think Godby cares that anybody's even with her or even on her wheel. She's just in attack mode the way she has been since pretty much kilometer 1. And we still have a lot of racing still to go. I mean, there's a long ways to go here as our 2 riders have managed to separate themselves. That group 3rd through 10 is about 300 meters back, and so they're gradually losing a little bit more time on our 2 leaders.
Yeah, getting some questions in the Facebook chat about how the distance is measured. You can see the gap to the right of their names on the leaderboard. That left graphic on the left side of the screen, it shows the name and then their current watts per kilogram, and then the distance to the next rider ahead of them or behind them. So it's measured in meters. You can see Double Hickok about 350 meters back from the Faulkner-Godby group. So gap's getting bigger, continuing to grow, and things looking really good for Jackie Godby right now. So far, Frankie.
Yeah, so far. And if you watch the numbers with Godby, like we talked about, steady. 4 watts per kilogram, 4.5 watts per kilogram. Faulkner is all over the place, from 3 watts up to 7 watts, and she's trying to figure out how to stay in that draft and be able to take advantage of kind of, let's just say, getting a free ride. As we go back to our main group right here, with Sidlick and Newsom. I believe, that's way in the back, Ayala, who's been lapped. But a nice group here as these guys are still fighting it out for the points. Godby has a pretty big lead, but the rest of the, Krista Doble-Hickok is still trying to move up in those rankings. And so a third or a fourth on a race today in the Armed Forces Classic would be super important for her.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right way for Faulkner to ride or not on the platform. You were talking about the surging power. Now, that's to be expected in the criterion, but I think you're right. I think Faulkner is still trying to figure out how to kind of sit in that slipstream in the game here. Still trying to figure out how to play RGT, if you will. So I think I've watched her get better just over the last 10 minutes or so. It seems like she's getting a little more stable. I'm noticing she's staying closer to Godby's wheel, too. I think she lost it in that group there a little bit, but Faulkner definitely seems to be getting better at RGT here.
Yeah, it's gradually figuring it out. We just saw some huge red numbers coming from the main group here as Ward was attacking up near like 8 and 9 watts per kilogram, and other riders having to react to that move. And so a little of activity coming from the main group right now as we go back towards our 2 leaders. 22 kilometers remaining. I mean, they've been racing for 40 minutes. Obviously, drinking, and we talk about that sugar intake that Godby has been talking about with the gels. That's all a big part of what's taking place right now. And also the cooling part. We saw, as you'd mentioned, a lot of different setups, some out in their garages where, it'd be a little bit cooler temperatures without having to have, 4 fans blowing on you. And I think that's a big reason why some of them set up outside, because they get that natural cooling effect and you don't overheat. An hour and a half race, full intensity, you're gonna end up sweating a lot, and you're gonna generate a lot of core heat, which is important in trying to pretty much eliminate when you're doing virtual racing.
Yeah, all part of the new era of indoor bike racing that everyone's figuring out today. Don't forget to hit us on Facebook and YouTube. A lot of good comments. Did you see the monster of the Midwest? I love that nickname for Jackie Godby here. That's a tough one to beat. I might have to adopt that one. She's certainly been the monster of the Echelon Racing League, that's for sure.
Yeah, just steady power. I mean, Godby is incredible. And I mean, pretty awesome too, the way the RGT platform is able to kind of take a course profile and make it into this virtual race for the riders to be able to go around. And so it's pretty neat. And they continue to innovate. I mean, I just saw that RGT came out with being able to make your own time trials, to be able to invite your friends, to be able to come out and do however many people you want to be able to come out or make your distance for the time trials. And also setting up a new format for the elimination race on the RGT platform, where you can decide how many laps you want the riders before they get eliminated, how many riders at the end. And an elimination race is the last rider across the line. So you can decide if 1 rider gets out or 2 riders gets out. So it's kind of mixing it up, kind of making it fun. Instead of just having the first rider across the line at the end, you kind of have, it's almost like a backward preem during the elimination race. And so RGT doing a fantastic job with these magic roads, and also with creating these platforms for all these races.
David Grief commenting on YouTube about Maddie Ward, a future Tibco rider. Ward signing with the Tibco SVB team this year from the MED Foundation squad. So it'll be nice to see her kind of graduate to the ranks with Tibco SVB. So keep an eye out for Maddie Ward. Good catch there, David. Good call. Nice to have the Tibco riders joining us this weekend. And well, one of the interesting parts of cycling, again, Frankie, racing against riders that you're going to be teammates with next year. It's part of this weird transfer market that exists in pro cycling.
Yeah, in the virtual world, you have to pay attention to it. I mean, if someone is riding as strong as like Godby, I think that would draw some attention, and to be able to bring on to, the road racing scene. I mean, you look at in the past, like Zwift Academy they've had riders that win the Zwift Academy and go on to be able to, get on a pro team. And, so Ollie Jones was one of those that took advantage of that to be able to do that. Having good power and being fit and being able to kind of showcase your skills on the RGT platform, definitely there's advantages to it.
It's a good way to identify talent. You got to try and find it where you can. So it's a good way to kind of find those riders that have maybe slipped through the cracks out there on the road. Speaking of identifying talent, one of my favorite parts of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, the kids race every year. They have hundreds of kids turn up to ride. Frankie, I know you get to watch this every year. It really is amazing. This is one of the biggest kids races in the country. The turnout is just incredible in DC.
Yeah, it's a big turnout, and it's incredible watching them on. And honestly, it's kind of one of the scariest races to watch because they are all over the place, and they're looking at mom and dad instead of watching where they're riding, and so they're going from the left side of the road to the right. But man, they have smiles on their faces, and they have a blast, and it's great, and it's hundreds of kids flying around the course, and so it's a ton of fun to be able to kind of see them crossing that line, and pretty much all of them feeling like winners.
Yeah, and they have races for all age groups. It's kind of funny to watch the older kids ripping around, and then the younger kids are kind of out on their parade lap. It's always fun to see them just taking it all in, and it's definitely one of the crowd favorites of the weekend as well. So another part of the race that we always look forward to that we're missing this year. I don't know if we could have organized a virtual kids race. Getting the real-life kids race together is tough enough. You know what it's like trying to wrangle a few hundred kids. I can't imagine trying to get them all on Zoom or RGT at the same time. Although, hey, shout out to our teachers out there virtually teaching. I got to give them some credit because they're kind of doing it, but getting them on RGT is a whole nother thing.
That would be a whole nother thing. And yeah, big shout out to all the virtual teachers. I mean, their workload has tripled compared to what they normally would do. And so, but it's critical that obviously, the kids need to continue to learn, and there's so many, as you get up there through high school, it's like, like college on the horizon. It's like, how the heck are you supposed to handle that? You're supposed to graduate. You're supposed to get your scores. How are you going to get your SATs, your ACTs? There's no in-person testing. It just goes on. And so very complicated situation that's taking place everywhere. And so this, in a way, is a simple solution to the cycling inability to have events, which is the virtual world. And so Echelon Racing League has done a fantastic job in putting together, I would say, pretty much some of the bigger events in the U.S. Or I don't want to say the biggest because there's some that aren't part of this, but definitely it's a fantastic series that they put together for these riders to take advantage of. And the series goes all the way to March. So it's not like it's just a one race or two race and you're done. There's going to be plenty of racing with the whole series going into March.
Chase group coming up on some lapped riders here, as looks like Morgan Chafin leading the way as Lauren Stevens and Christopher Hickok just kind of sit back in this group. This is still a really dangerous group, Frankie. I mean, that group alone, without Jackie Godby or Kristen Faulkner, is definitely something to worry about if those two weren't off the front. So this one still has a chance. I'm not counting riders like Lauren Stevens out yet because Godby, we've never really seen a ride like this from Jackie Godby. Normally, Godby is just keeping the pressure on at the front, but in the Echelon Racing League, at least, we haven't really seen a ride like this from Jackie Godby where she attacked so early. So this is uncharted territory today at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, very uncharted. And so my question would be, how long is a lap here? Yeah, I'm curious about that. I mean, normally it's 1K, but on the RGT Magic Roads, I wonder what we're at, because Faulkner and Godby right now building up to about a 700 meter, 800 meter. If they get a little bit more of a lead, could we see the two riders actually lap the chase group? And that would be something that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the loop is a kilometer long or not. Like you said, I'm not sure if we would see the riders getting lapped after a K. I'll see if I can figure that out. More riders up at the front of the chase group. This is Erin Ayala up at the front. Erin joining the Velocity Vixen team. We saw her racing in D.C. I think she's from the D.C. area, actually, not far from there. So a friend of the race, and nice to see her hanging with this group, this very strong group of riders trying to work out if they should be chasing these two down up the road or just sit in and try and race for a third. Tibco flying up the left side, I think, just trying to go cover this small move rolling off the front.
Yeah, different riders just attacking each other in that back group. Boville was in that group also from Team Infinite, so good to be able to see them. And right behind here, So Godby and Faulkner went through them, and that's why you saw that reaction. They're trying to attack, and so if you are in like that chase group that's right behind Faulkner right now, if you could get onto one of those wheels, are you able to experience the draft on a rider that's a lap up?
I don't think so. I don't think the lapped riders will affect the drafting. So I think in real life, how they tell you not to work with lapped riders or tell the lapped riders not to work with the leaders, I think it kind of forces you past them or over to the side. But I'll figure that out. I'm not sure about that.
I don't mean to. It seems like I'm putting you on the spot. I'm learning here, so I'm trying to figure it out as we go along.
We're all learning. Frankie, I didn't even know what Zoom was a year ago, so...
Yeah, it's just this learning curve, because that's kind of interesting, because when you get lapped, even though they're going a lot faster, if you were sitting in and staying a little bit rested, if you're in that group, you might try to attack and be able to get on to Faulkner and Godby and kind of get a ride going away from the riders that you were in, which would be very similar to real life, although, riders who are lapped are not supposed to work with each other, but you know how that goes. A lot of times you got people kind of tagging on, at least for a lap or two, and in this world, there's no referees yelling at you. There's nobody blowing the whistle. There's no one pointing at you to get off the wheel. And so that makes it a little bit different here. I'm so curious about how that would work. Faulkner looking very comfortable, though, right there.
No virtual refs out on the course, but they do have some rules in the virtual racing league here. There's two ways that they verify, through power and then through weight. First, the trainers are calibrated with what's called a spin down test. It's basically each trainer manufacturer has a different method to measure it. And then they have to verify their power two different ways and the weight 24 hours before the race. Each day, the riders have to submit a video that shows them weighing themselves. It shows you have to show the scale, and then you have to show a fixed weight object, and then you have to show you on the scale, and then you have to show the object on the scale, and then it's you with the object on the scale. There's this whole protocol that the riders go through for weigh-in. Another one of those unique parts of virtual racing. Chris Doble-Hickok was musing about this before the start of Bucks County Classic yesterday. Another weird thing, just like how I didn't know what Zoom was a year ago, I don't think anyone would have ever expected to be weighing themselves with a barbell on a scale on video.
Right, but the weight is so important to be able to have accurate because of the whole watts per kilogram, which is what you see when they're going into the red, and that's kind of determines on pretty much how fast their avatar is going, and so that watts per kilogram extremely important. And so being able to get that weight correct and in the rules that they have with calibrating the trainers and the watts is the best way that they can do to be able to make it a fair race and a fair event for the riders that are in this. And RGT's done a fantastic job with kind of controlling that and making sure that it's a good, fair race. As Godby has just been, spinning away. Again, look at her, 4.3, 4.7 watts per kilogram. Not a big difference. 6.9 coming from Faulkner. Faulkner on the front right now. I don't know if this is an attack coming out of the corner or a surge, but Faulkner right now out of the saddle, 7 watts per kilogram. So Godby finally having to respond to something with 15 kilometers left in the race.
And look at this. Here they are. That's Faulkner up in the top right, Godby up in the top left. Faulkner is definitely hitting it here as she puts the pressure on Godby. Man, talk about brutal racing here from Tivco SVB. Faulkner is now taking it to Jackie Godby. This is awesome back and forth racing from this group of two. I thought Faulkner was just going to sit in today. I thought her goal was to just play Jackie Godby as long as she could, but looks like Faulkner going to have a go at it here today.
Well, Godby now having to react to this. Faulkner coming out of the turn, she's still coasting and waiting for her to get going, but that was virtually she was coasting. But if you look at what she's doing in her virtual space where she's riding, she's putting out a big effort. So a nice move by Faulkner now going through that group, and so this will be interesting to see how Godby reacts to this. A big move. There's still plenty of racing still to go, but looked like almost she was resting up and she had recovered from that huge effort to bridge to Godby, and now she's on the attack.
Well, here you go, Frankie. This is starting to lap the group because that is like 17th through 20th place that they just caught right there. So they are starting to lap riders out there, and they might be catching that group here pretty soon. They're at 900 meters right now, back to Chris Doble-Hickok. So they might start seeing, I think that's the group just in front of them. I think that's Faulkner looking at the chasers here. So they, I think, are about to go a lap up here with Godby and Faulkner.
Unbelievable. lapping the chase group. So second place would be just in front of him. I think Faulkner was trying to attack, maybe to be able to get up into that group and see if she could get any help from some of her teammates. Godby doing a fantastic job reacting to that. Never saw Godby even really get into the red, though. She just kind of kept it steady, gradually brought back Faulkner. So now Faulkner back on the sitting in mode. We're going to see what happens once they get up to this group and how the interaction is. Because, these two riders are extremely strong. They've lapped the field, but this group in front of them also contains a lot of very strong riders. And I think we're going to get a better indication of how the drafting works, or if you're lapped, on what can happen, as they have just lapped third through about 10th place on the circuit.
Wow, so they go a lap up as now Lauren Stevens finds herself on the wrong side of this story. Remember, Stevens is used to lapping this group at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, but in real life, the virtual edition going much different. Remember back in 2015 where we saw her go solo off the front, one of the few solo wins at the Clarendon Cup where they were able to lap the field. She had a huge TIPCO SBB squad with her, but remember, that was when they were going up against riders like Corinne Rivera in this race with United Healthcare. So there were a lot of strong riders, but it ended up being the body of the race that made it so tough in 2015. And Lauren Stevens able to get away solo. The coolest part, though, was her post-up. She had one of the most legendary post-ups in 2015. She crossed the line at one lap to go and was looking up at us like, watch this finish. It's going to be fun. And then when she came back across the line, she had this the look back where she was looking for the riders behind her. Nobody in the picture. She was all alone by herself on the line. It was a legendary win at the Clarendon Cup in 2015.
Yeah, she showed a lot of pose, being able to drop as Corinne Rivera came in second. Corinne Rivera took that win in 2016, and so Team TIPCO had perfect strategy, and they took advantage of it. And when you have a strong rider like Lauren Stevens, I mean, all things fell into place for her, and so she did a big win there for the Armed Forces Classic.
A much different riding for Lauren Stevens this year in 2020 as she finds herself a lap down today to her teammate Kristen Faulkner and Jackie Godby. So it looks like they're going to sit in here. Looks like those two riders are just going to sit right in this group. I don't know that they're in a real hurry to get past the group here. It might get a little confusing, but I think they're just going to sit in.
That's what I agree with you. I think either they're just sitting in or the group is just going to stay with them. They've ridden at a little bit slower pace, so they're going to be a little bit fresher. So they're just going to be able to kind of tag on to this group and kind of follow. Now, how much will it affect the first and second one as Godby and Faulkner are following each other? That'll play out. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Lauren Stevens sitting in the back there, Maddie Ward sitting in the back there. But one thing to keep in mind is that when you're in the back, you're still going to get that whiplash effect. And having to accelerate to be able to keep up with the leaders. And so you don't want to kind of get yourself in too much trouble. As we see, Lauren Stevens just right there went into the red at 7 watts per kilogram, 9 watts per kilogram. Lauren, Stevens realizing she's kind of losing some distance here. She has to put in a big effort to be able to keep up with that front group right now. But two riders have lapped everybody else as we have Faulkner and Godby one lap up.
Echelon Racing League Amateur League registration now open for the Gateway Cup, next stop on the Amateur League Series. These riders race the same courses that the pros do a week before, so Gateway Cup coming up December 26th and 27th before the pros roll into Virtual Town over in St. Louis for the Gateway Cup Pro event at the beginning of January. You can register at echelonracingleague.com. Just click on races and register for the Amateur Series. 4 categories, 1 through 4, so there's a level for every rider, and then the top 10 riders from that amateur series get a call up to the pro race, so they get a race in the pro ranks if you're the top 10 the week before in the amateur series. Frankie, you better get on Facebook because there is some major stuff going down in the comments section right now. It sounds like there's a plot to get us racing, and I don't know if I'm quite ready for this. I'm certainly not trained up for it. Jaden Yeager saying we need to get the promoters and announcers exhibition virtual race during the last stop at the Tour of America's Dairyland here at the Echelon Racing League. So start training now, buddy. Sounds like we might be in the race by the end of this thing.
Yeager's crazy. That's all I know. He is a strong one. He's been, former Masters Criterium national champion, and so it's they all think it's easy, and I know how hard it is to be able to get fit to do these platforms, and I've been riding inside. I've been doing some of these races, and I get my doors blown off. The starts are just so hard, and like I mentioned, you go like 30 minutes, and I just blow up. I just completely done. I can't even finish some of the rides I've been doing. So, but learning curve, it's fun, it's good, keeps me. Keeps fit, but it's very engaging. The RGT platform, when you're riding with riders like this and you kind of have the dynamic of people going off the front, going off the back, it's very engaging and makes the time go by quick. It makes the kilometers go by quick. And so in that aspect, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got to get Rob Laybourne all trained up in this virtual racing world. I think he's still riding on rollers made out of like old whiskey barrels and horsehair held together. We gotta get him into 2020 here. Rob, 10 kilometers to go here in the pro women's race. How are you feeling different today? Normally you're running around with your radio and pointing things out, and now you're in your living room watching the virtual racing. How are things going over there in DC?
Oh, this is a lot more comfortable. I'm not sure I'm willing to take on the challenge of having an announcers and promoters race. I prefer sitting in my chair, drinking out of my swell, and enjoying the race. So, no, this is great. I think you guys really said it best, that this is really shaping into kind of the tactics and what we would normally see at a real race. So I'm pleased at how this is unfolding, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how authentic the racing is, and nice to have a rider like Lauren Stevens in the mix here. It's kind of a good bridge to benchmark between the virtual racing world and the real life world. So thanks, Rob. I'm glad to hear that you're also on board with boycotting the announcer promoter racing. Frankie, it sounds like we're already unionizing, so we'll let Jaden know that the riders union is already starting to push back here on his idea.
Yeah, as a typical bike racer, just wants to have a race so that he can showcase himself.
I think there's some truth to that, and maybe some truth to that with the 1998 Clarendon Cup, Rob.
I'm happy to just watch, not a problem.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. I like the view here. All right, under 10 kilometers to go. Faulkner and Godby trying to duke it out here in this group. Again, that's Kristen Faulkner out of the saddle on the right-hand side of your screen, and the rock-solid Jackie Godby sitting in the middle of the group there. I don't think we've seen Godby get out of the saddle really once yet. Nice to see Faulkner, I think, maybe getting a little chat in the team Discord, in the team chat, keeping the spirits high for Kristen Faulkner. So it's about to heat up here, guys. We are almost there to the point where it's just going to come down to a drag race between these two. And Frankie, it's time to start thinking about your strategy here. I mean, do you stick together as long as you can? Do you try and go to the line together, or do you try and launch the attack early, which maybe Godby's trying to do here, trying to gap things off a little bit?
Godby's just going. I mean, you just look at it, it's like her engine is just overheating. Her face is already bright red. You can see the effort that's coming out. It's amazing that her engine doesn't blow up, and she just keeps going. Faulkner looks much more comfortable, but she's being gapped off right now. She's let's say 50 meters off the back, and so pretty impressive ride that Godby has done. So 8.2 kilometers to go, still quite a little bit of a ways. And I don't know if it's just going to fall on Faulkner. Is she the only one that's going to be able to try to have to bridge up to this? Or will she be able to take advantage of maybe having some teammates come to the front and do some of that work for her and be able to sit on in that draft? And so that's kind of that unknown that I'm not sure how that plays out. As we see Krista Doble-Hickok come to the front, Lauren Stevens is on the side there, kind of patrolling everything. And then here's Faulkner. Right now, that's Faulkner showing second, but I'm not sure. I'm not seeing where Godby is on the road in front of her.
She's like 200, 250 meters up there. So Godby put in a significant gap back to Faulkner. She is now stuck in between Godby and Krista Doble-Hickok in third. So Godby has now dropped Faulkner in the group. Faulkner is sitting in between Godby and this group, the chase group. So she's about 500 meters up the road from this group, and then another 200 meters up to Jackie Godby. Now, second place is safe. She's obviously not going to lose that because she went a lap up on that group. So Faulkner is really just trying to hold on to second, I guess. There's not much that she can do in this situation because it looks like Jackie Godby might be gone out of this world for Kristen Faulkner.
Yeah, it's a little short time span of losing that focus, and it's kind of maybe backfired a little bit on Faulkner when she was looking at her phone or trying to be able to communicate on Discord and not really kind of seeing what was happening when Godby snuck up the road. And it's so hard to be able to come back from a mistake, really. It's the same as in real life. If you make a mistake, you got to put out a huge effort to be able to bridge a gap, and that's exactly what happened right here. So Godby took advantage of that, has gone up the road. Faulkner trying to be able to chase her down, but gap sitting right at about 200-300 meters. It's going to be a tough road for Faulkner to be able to bring back Godby, considering how strong Jacqueline Godby has shown race after race after race. And I would imagine, the fatigue, and you talked to her about this, Brad, I think yesterday, has got to be setting in a little bit. Doing all the stages of Gila, then doing Doylestown, and now here at Armed Forces Classic. That's a lot of intensity in a short amount of time span.
Yeah, and a big block of virtual racing, too. I mean, you got to go back months and look at the amount of racing that these riders are doing each week. It is certainly a different kind of racing, a different season, and a different workload and different training mode. Hearing some comments in YouTube and Facebook saying that Faulkner might have had a technical, losing the connection there for a little bit. That would cause you to drop back because the watts wouldn't be registering. If your Wi-Fi drops out, you basically just register 0 watts until that gets back in. Maybe it was a disconnection sometime. The trainer and the power meter can't communicate or don't connect. There's a few tech things that could go wrong. So maybe Faulkner had some sort of tech issue out there, but luckily she had done the work early, so she'll be able to hold on for second place today. I don't think I see her getting lapped, or re-lapped, I should say, by the Lauren Stevens, Krista Doble-Hickok group.
Yeah, as in real life, you can't control some of those things with the technical issues. I'm sure little things from Bluetooth to the internet with the connectivity. Same thing, when you're flying around, you could have lapped the field and all of a sudden you get a flat tire, you clip a pedal, you crash. Some of these things just happen. And so it's kind of interesting to see, with Faulkner now, like you said, second, pretty solid, and she's just got to keep it steady right now. 4.8 watts per kilogram, sitting about 300 meters behind. So only 6.1 kilometers to go, but otherwise I'd say this is a fantastic ride by Faulkner to be able to react to that mood by Godby and to be able to be there the entire race until maybe she had that technical issue.
Yeah, I hate to see it, but that's part of bike racing, I guess, part of the unpredictable nature of virtual and real life bike racing. So Godby looking like she might be on a solo win here after lapping the field. She's going to go away again, and the nicknames are continuing to roll into the Facebook chat. We got Godby, the goddess of watts, claiming her stake to the throne. I saw a comment about gobbling up the competition earlier for Godby. Maybe let the pros handle the jokes around here.
That's you, Brad.
Oh, well, I don't have any good jokes, so send them in to the Facebook chat. Only one other time we've seen a situation like this in the real world Armed Forces Cycling Classic, the Clarendon Cup. It was back in 2001 where Ina Yoko Teutenberg lapped the field and then went away solo to win. So this is a very rare occurrence. And Frankie, you see some pretty impressive names here on the past winners list of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, the Clarendon Cup, starting in 1998 with a win from Brenda Brashears. Look at how many national champions have been here as well. The names in yellow are national champions either in crit or road racing. It's been a pretty incredible history here of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. And Jackie Godby about to add her name to this list as the first virtual winner of the Clarendon Cup.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the winners here, even despite it being a 100-kilometer race normally, they're the fastest of the fast. I mean, Tina Pick, Corinne Rivera, Marlies Garcia, these women, Kendall Ryan, also previous Criterium national champion, very, very fast riders that take the wins here. Godby tackling it in a different way. Instead of waiting for a sprint and showing off her speed, which we've seen because she's won group sprints before in the virtual world, yesterday being a perfect example of that at Doylestown. She decided to tackle it from the front, and it's amazing that has been able to put out such a consistent effort to actually lap everybody and then be able to break away again and go off solo. So, it just becomes more and more impressive on what this woman is able to accomplish, and to be interesting to see later on how that's going to translate when she gets outside and goes back to her pro triathlon career, or if she gets picked up and maybe does some road racing and seeing how strong she is out on the road.
I like the first-person view, too. I think this is a cool way of watching the race. Reading some comments down here from the chat rooms. Yeah, it's certainly a different way to see the drafting. It's a good way to visualize what these riders are doing, the gap that they have to make up. I know we were talking with Eric Hill yesterday, one of the commissioners of the Echelon Racing League. He was talking about how his racing really improved when he switched to first-person mode, because he wasn't watching as much around him. He could kind of just focus on the race, and he wasn't as worried about like trying to see a surge coming up behind him and get ahead of it or anything like that. So he's saying that his racing really improved when he just focused on that first person mode. So it'd be a good tip for some of our Echelon Racing League Amateur Series riders. Try out first person mode, see what it's like, see if your racing changes, see if the dynamics change at all. See Godby reaching for something here. Frankie, is it too late to start taking on food and water now? I mean, the carbohydrates, the sugars that Jackie Godby was talking about, those should already be in, right?
Well, they should be in, but I mean, if you didn't take any early on in the race, then yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, I think, what is there, 8 kilometers to go? Oh, only 3 kilometers to go? Yeah, I mean, you don't really need it now. Now you just got to gut it out. I mean, hopefully you're not bonking and you're going to be able to make it to the finish, but Godby's just flying, and it's amazing. You know, you talk about being a criterium and seeing the swing and the power numbers, and seeing that kind of sawtooth power file. I gotta, if you looked at Godby's at the end of this race, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at how more steady and even it is, probably compared to a lot of the other riders, as she's just been able to keep it right at around 4.3, 4.5. She's figured out how to be able to coast at the right time, to get around the corner, to apply the power, to kind of keep it even, in using that smaller cadence. And perhaps that's a little bit of the key for criteriums, is maybe not riding in such a big gear and having a little bit higher cadence. But whatever it is, it's working for Godby.
Oh, she's going to be able to enjoy this last couple kilometers on the way in, like a nice cruise down the lakefront path in Chicago. Faulkner sitting in that chase group, so she's going to get a little draft out of the group on the way in, but a solid ride for her. This is one of those that you'll always wonder, right? You'll always wonder, what if it weren't for the technical? What if it weren't for that flat tire? What if I didn't drop my chain? You know, a million things could have gone differently out there, but still a good ride for Kristen Faulkner today, as TIBCO SVB continues their march into virtual racing here. We're going to be seeing a lot more of them. I think they're one of the teams that is really starting to adopt the virtual racing platforms and really seeing the value in what they can deliver to their riders and sponsors.
Yeah, Faulkner out of Menlo Park, California. That's the thing with Team TIBCO. They got, well, all these teams, they have riders that kind of spread out across the country or Canada or the world. We've seen that a little bit more in the men's side with riders from all over the place competing virtually here. And so it's bringing in a lot of really talented riders into one spot to kind of go up against each other, and that's what's happening here. Faulkner did a fantastic race with Team TIBCO, and like you just mentioned, I'm sure we're going to see them competing. They're going to see the benefits of competing in the virtual world here, as Godby now 1.6 kilometers still to go. So she's on her final leg, getting ready to be able to take victory again, and I think this is going to move her up to 5 races and 5 victories. Pretty much setting the gold medal standard for anybody to be able to try to match a little bit later on when they start doing their own virtual races.
Well, yeah, nothing if not consistent. I mean, I think that's the big story here for Jackie Godby. An impressive win today, but an even more impressive body of work over the last few months, as she will widen her lead in the Echelon Racing League, adding a few more points to her total, as now Godby can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride in. Enjoy the virtual world of Clarendon here on the ride in. Faulkner can enjoy this one, too. Again, there's no threat of her losing second place, so first and second are pretty much worked out here. It's just going to be the race for third behind them, as the group will come through. So there's Jackie Godby rolling through the line, getting the bell, for the virtual bell, I should say, for one lap to go. We got to figure out like a bell graphic or something. We got to do something cooler in the virtual racing for the last lap, Frankie. We'll work on that. I don't have a bell handy here. Maybe I should just do a real life bell,
like little fireworks.
Oh, there you go. Shoot some fireworks off in your house. Perfect. Why don't you do that?
No, not in your house. I mean on the screen. Little fireworks go off on the screen. And then it's like bell lap with 1 lap to go. So we have our first and second. We know what's going on with that. But I think, so that's the other part. Are the lapped riders, are they finishing on the same lap as Godby, or are they going to have to do another lap? Is like Krista Doble-Hickok and Lauren Stevens, do they have 2 to go, or do they have 1 to go? We'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they do the full distance. I'm pretty sure they're going to keep rolling around and do the full distance of the course. I don't think they start finishing riders once the leader has finished, but we'll see, because Jackie Godby is inside 1 kilometer to go, and she's going to hit the line here very soon. She'll see the arch up ahead, and then riders won't be far behind her.
But that's going to be interesting to see, is that group going for third, at 3rd through 7th. That's going to be a good battle to be able to watch once Godby finishes across this line. So we know Godby's going to take first, Faulkner's going to be second, but what an incredible ride. I mean, 5 days, 5 wins. Jacqueline Godby has proved invincible taking the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
And Faulkner actually going to have a pretty good recovery to this one as Godby hits the line. Faulkner was at about 400 meters back, so she's going to be in this group somewhere. It looks like Doble-Hickok up here at the front, and Lauren Stevens going to try and sort it out for the final podium spot, as Faulkner going to take silver here, and then Wiseman, Doble-Hickok, Stevens, Chafin, Ward, those are going to be the riders fighting for the 3rd spot here. So we'll watch Faulkner roll through and then see if we can catch 3rd. Looks like Wiseman's starting to surge here, and not sure if she got it.
Well, I think they have 1 more lap.
Right, of course.
So now we're on the attack. So this is going to be for 3rd through about 8th right now. Wiseman's sitting right there in the middle. Looks like a Tipco rider on the front. Might have been Lauren Stevens, and the rest of the riders starting to be able to come up. So big attacks right now as they're about to catch another group. But this is our little group right here that's trying to be able to make our virtual podium.
Yeah, so this will be 1K to go here.
So Doble-Hickok's in here, Schaffer's in here, Ward is in here, Weisman is in this group also. Waiting to be able to see those numbers turn to red as they're going to be starting their sprint here in just a little bit, counting down just under 500 meters right now. Doble-Hickok, look at them lined out across the road, all of them wanting to be in the front.
Yeah, just trying to figure out the sprint dynamics here in the group. Little gap off the back. Wiseman, I think, has been the most aggressive rider here in the last kilometer or so, but you see Doble-Hickok and Stevens, the 2 riders riding on the front here. So they'll start lining it up here soon. I'm waiting to see the power numbers change. I'm waiting to see them go into the red and orange zone. Here goes Doble-Hickok and Stevens now. Stevens going to lead it out. Hickok trying to stay on her wheel. Now Stevens gets to the front. Lauren Stevens going to try and go out from 100 meters here. Doble-Hickok wants to respond, but she won't be able to get there. So Lauren Stevens going to lock in 3rd place at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, and I think Krista Doble-Hickok unofficially would be 4th, Weisman in 6th, Ward in 7th. And so now we're going on to 8th through maybe 13th that's out there. And I'm trying to see here how 1.9 kilometers to go. So I'm not sure if that's 1 lap or 2 laps, as some of the riders have been lapped a couple times. But overall, an unbelievable ride. For the 2 riders breaking away and lapping everybody. That's a huge amount of power. Hour and 17, so not too long. I think yesterday's race took a little bit longer on the Doylestown circuit than what it did here for the Armed Forces Classic.
Yeah, a little shorter today. This is the group for 10th place that we're watching now. 1 through 9 are in. Emily Newsom just hit the line for 9th place. And now we'll watch this group of 10 sorted out here for the final spot, final top 10 spot on the wide angle podium, as they call it. I think they do a 5 deep podium at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, so maybe it's appropriate that we track the top 10 here on RGT.
And Brad, I think, didn't we, you received that picture yesterday with that medallion that for the Armed Forces Cycling Classic that the winner's going to be getting.
Yeah, winners of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic this year will get a challenge coin. They hand out the challenge coins to riders on the podium every year, but obviously since we don't have our in-person connection this year, they're going to be mailing out challenge coins to the winner of the women's race and men's races here at the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic. We saw the winners of Tour de Gila got they're getting trophies shipped to them. They have those very cool bowls, the ceramics that they make every year and give to the winners.
One thing for sure, we know there's no sock height limit, as we see with Godby, with the socks all the way up to her knees. Don't have to worry about that from the UCI. And Faulkner's all smiles. She doesn't even look that tired.
No, looking pretty comfortable, just cooling down, spinning down. We're going to let our top 10 riders finish through here. We'll take a short break, and then we're going to come back and chat with those riders. But, man, what an exciting day out there, Frankie. I don't know that I saw a solo rider winning today in the women's race, but Jackie Godby was sure impressive out there.
Yeah, a lot of fun to watch. I would have predicted maybe Godby would win, but not in the fashion that she did with such a dominating performance. So that was pretty fun. But Faulkner also, I got to give a lot of credit to be able to put out that kind of power, to bridge the gap that she did to such a strong rider was super impressive. And she was there the whole time. Not really sure what happened when she got that gap opened up at the end, but a nice finish for Tibco to put Faulkner into second, and then Lauren Stevens coming in third. So those are some valuable points that I think Tibco will be happy to get. But Godby obviously racking up enough points to be able to pad her lead even more.
Yeah, we're just going to let the riders cool down a little bit before we grab our post-race interviews. We'll try and grab a word with Jackie Godby and Faulkner in the Zoom room here. Still trying to work out top 10. I think I saw the McCrosty group still waiting to go in, so we should see her rolling through here in just a bit. And I think she actually might have just wrapped up 10th place out there. So, all right, let's take a short break here from the Echelon Racing League. When we come back, we're talking to your winners from the Pro Women's Race at the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
The world is changing.
I'm looking to do things better.
To improve.
Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's right.
I embrace change.
I seek adventure and discovery.
I explore the unexplored.
To know the unknown.
Even in the toughest moments, we ride together.
Even in the moments when we're at our limits,
we support each other. It's time to move up a level.
Push that little bit harder.
Changes we make now will make the future better for all.
The efforts we put in today
will pay dividends tomorrow.
We all have the power to up the game.
To build something better.
It's not time to play.
It's time to get real.
It's time to be a game changer.
As an athlete, getting marginally better is one thing. Getting exponentially better puts you in a whole new ballgame. Biomoto uses a proprietary digital process to capture movement at 200 frames per second and 70 sensors per foot to measure ground-based forces, resulting in advanced motion analysis that's up to 10 times more accurate than orthotics. It's the data generated by this process that allows Biomoto to construct custom insoles that make athletes faster, stronger, and more stable, and result in an unprecedented 95% success rate.
...2020 Virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic brought to you by Biomoto USA. Find the motor in you. By Nations and Nations Leap, enhancing the reach of esports. By Hyperice, move better and enhance your recovery with Hyperice. And by Project Echelon, educating, equipping, and empowering veterans through physical activity. Nice look at what I think is one of the coolest bike lanes in America, leading up to the Capitol there. Frankie, one of my favorite traditions of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, jumping on the bike share bikes after the race each year and riding over to D.C., checking out the monuments. It's a nice ride from the official hotel in Crystal City to quick jog over on the bike path to go get a nice look at some of the monuments from just outside of the course. All right, let's see if we can grab a word with Kristen Faulkner in our Zoom room, who should be ready to go. Kristen, can you hear us in there? I'm not sure if she has her speakers on or if we're sending the audio to the Zoom room, so we'll see if we can get Kristen dialed in here. We also have Jackie Godby on a call. We might try and go over to her and see if we can chat with our winner today while we try and get second place dialed in here in our Zoom room. But Faulkner looking pretty comfortable after a tough ride as that was out there today. Jackie, in her now official post-race press conference area here, you've kind of worked out your post-race press conference rhythm now as you do more and more of these. Very different race for you today out there, Jackie. Significantly different than what we saw yesterday at the Bucks County Classic. What was it today? I mean, what made you think I'm going to try and do it different out there today?
Every time it's a different race, you're always watching the tempo of the race, and this is actually something I've been trying to do for a while. With my background in triathlon, I really enjoy that TT effort. I guess you can say I'm a sucker for pain. And again, this is something that, I just love doing. I really do love the long straightaways. I love, just pushing myself to the absolute max where I'm not only racing the course and racing my competitors, but I'm racing myself and really just seeing what the best I can put out on the road is. So, it's a fun change of pace. It's something new. And, I say this a lot. I'm always here for the fun of competition to see what new things I can learn, what new fun I can have today. And like you said, it was new, it was different, it was fun.
Yeah, kind of when Faulkner joined you, did you expect to see that happen? I mean, were you thinking riders were going to come up to you, or did you think you might be able to solo away? Were you surprised when you had company in your solo move?
I was surprised. At that point, I thought I was going to make it, and then I saw Faulkner's, really crazy sprint, and I was just watching the power she was put out, and I was impressed. I was really just putting in the effort. I was beginning to mentally prepare myself for the remaining 30 laps of the race, and I saw her come up, and my first thought is, oh no, like she's dropping crazy watts, like this is the end, I'm not going to have this breakaway. And my second thought was like, great, I have company, like let's make this fun, let's do this. We've got a new challenge, and it really was fun to have her kind of keep pushing the tempo, keep me on track, and especially when we rounded the course again and met up with the chase pack, it was really fun to have her there and kind of keep my head in the game.
Yeah, how is the racing different in races like Echelon Racing League races where you're kind of the pack leader, you've got the target on your back, and then you go to races like Esports World Championships where you get a little more freedom, right? A lot more riders in there with targets on their back. So is the racing different when you're leading the series like the Echelon Racing League?
I think, there's a target on everybody's back. And I said this yesterday, I don't like to put pressure on myself. I realize, this is sports. What's the worst that can happen? It is really exciting to win. I think everybody loves that. But that's the wonderful thing about sports is, if you had a bad day, if let's say I got a hamstring cramp or something and I didn't do as well as I wanted, I still get a victory by going out on the course. I never consider myself losing or doing badly. It's always a lesson. And when I got 5th place at World Championships, I was so excited because I got 5th place behind 4 champions who competed on a global level. And I think that's something so important I carry to every race. I don't think of myself as having a target on my back. I think of myself as trying to learn from all the amazing women, and I'm really just lucky to be able to be on their level and come out every day. And that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the addition of Lauren Stevens to the field. You talked about some of those heroes racing at the Esports World Championships. You were just behind her at eWorlds. Seems like the competition is starting to increase. Not only riders starting to figure out the platform, but stronger riders starting to come in here and race the series. We're seeing some kind of local riders come in and join these events on a per-event basis. So it seems like the racing is getting tougher and tougher as the season goes on here in the Echelon Racing League.
And I think that's absolutely a wonderful thing. You know, particularly in women's sports, the more people we have, the better. The better the competition gets, the more excitement we get, and the better it gets for everyone. You know, I'm quite frankly excited to see what happens in the next races and what new riders we can pull in and get excited and help build this platform.
All right, well, Jackie, congratulations, and a little bit of rest now. What is your next e-race? Are you on Zwift this week? You doing any weekly races after this?
I'm going to celebrate Christmas, and I think my next big race is actually going to be the next Echelon race. At the beginning of 2021, I got the rest of this year off. I'm going to sleep, eat my celebratory chocolate, take a little bit of time for the holidays, and recover.
Hey, so Jackie, stay here because I want to bring in our race director, Rob Laybourne, who has a prize for you, because the winners of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic in real life get a challenge coin that we give to the winners on the podium every year. And so as the winner of the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic, Rob just sent me a message and said that he would like to virtually present you with the coin. So I'm going to see if we can get Rob in here to present our winner's challenge coin to our women's pro race winner, Jackie Godby. There we go. Rob, do you have the coin with you?
I do. Yep. So, Jackie, I want to congratulate you. A tremendous job. Normally, I would hand you this with my hand, and you would shake hands, and you would, there you go. And, yeah, you're one of only a handful of people, no pun intended, to receive this coin. We're honored that you have participated in our event, and we want to challenge you to come out when we return to racing on the road as well. You're a great talent. It's exciting to watch you, and you put on a good show today. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you very much. This was a fun race, and I look forward to coming out and seeing the race in person, hopefully next year.
All right. Congratulations, Jackie, and thank you, Rob. Can't wait to have Jackie in real life at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic in 2021. All right, we're going to take another short break as we get ready for our pro men's race coming up next. We'll take a look at the women's results and then get ready for our next race of the day here at the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Normatec recovery systems give you a high-tech compression massage for warm-up pre-workout and recovery post-workout.
The technology is very safe and is used by a broad range of athletic types and really any fitness enthusiast looking to get the most out of their workout.
The whole idea is that we're using air compression to help increase circulation in the body. We wanted to mimic physiology, the way the body moves fluids. We went ahead and took a lot of those principles and put it into a system that you can use on your different extremities and your hips as well.
Normatec has been an industry leader in pneumatic compression, providing improved mobility and profound healing for thousands of patients. We continually work with researchers to study and develop the effectiveness of our technology.
It's all about creating that community space where people have a conversation around recovery and start really challenging their beliefs in what is possible and what they've known and maybe what could be.
Hey, Kristen, can you hear us in the Zoom room? Okay. Make sure we can hear you.
Yep.
All right, cool. Gotcha. So, yeah, we're in commercial break right now. We're going to come back from that about a minute and a half. Virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic brought to you by Biomoto USA. Find the moto in you. By Nations, enhancing the reach of esports. By HyperIce, move better and enhance your recovery with HyperIce. And by Project Echelon, educating, equipping, and empowering veterans through physical activity. All right, let's grab a word with second place on the day as we go into our Zoom room with Kristen Faulkner.
All right, Kristen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
All right, good. First of all, congratulations on the ride. The only rider that gave Jackie Godby a run for her money out there today. Take me through the strategy. When you saw Godby go away, was this a Tibco team effort, or are you just thinking, I got the legs today, I can make that gap?
Well, we wanted to bridge. We wanted someone to try and chase her, and I had energy, so I just went and caught her and then tried to draft off her. And then I had some Wi-Fi connectivity issues. My power went out for a little bit, so I got dropped. And then my teammates came and tried to swoop me up and help me to the finish. But we just didn't have quite enough time. But Jackie was so strong; she didn't really gain much. Or sorry, we didn't really gain much towards the end. So she put up a really, really strong race today. So. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, were you surprised with how this race went? Certainly different than most virtual races with the criterium format. All these corners, it slows you down, it's braking you. I mean, was it significantly different than other virtual races you've done?
It was, yeah. It took me a while to get used to just, the descents in the corners and then using that descent to really pop uphill. It took me a few laps to get the hang of that. I was like in the front going downhill on some of the initial corners, and then I was like, everyone's zooming by me. I need to not be in the front, kind of going from that downhill straight into the uphill. So it was much more tactical than a lot of virtual races, which is actually good practice. And so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And then as we all kind of learn this virtual world together, we've all been kind of tracking the progress over the last few months. After one race today on RGT, on the criterium, do you think you do anything different going forward? I mean, what did you learn today? What was the biggest learning for you?
On RGT and virtual racing specifically, I think RGT is a much more tactical platform. I think you have to be much more conscious. It's not just about your wattage. It's about making sure that you're aware of where the corners are, where the descents and ascents are. It's just a much more tactical platform, and the course is a lot more tactical as well. And so having, being aware of the course, I think doing course recons is a lot more important than some of the much longer races on other platforms. So I think doing course recons and being very cognizant of, what the gradient is and where the corners are, I think is extra important in a race on RGT.
Are we going to see more virtual racing for you? It seems like Tibco is starting to make this a part of more and more programs for riders. Is there more virtual racing on your schedule right now?
Yeah, there is throughout the year. I think it's a great way for us to stay connected during the off season, make sure we get in those hard efforts, practice racing. And, I think virtual racing is a new discipline, and I think it'll only continue to grow. And so for us having a presence on there, having our sponsors have a presence, and then giving us an opportunity as a team to really race together during the off season when we're not together will help us perform better in real life. So yeah, you'll be seeing more of Tibco Silicon Valley Bank on these virtual races.
Looking forward to it.
Keep an eye out for those blue jerseys of Tibco SVB and Kristen Faulkner, second place on the day today. Congratulations, Kristen.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, pro men just about ready to roll. They are just under 3 minutes away from taking off from the start line as we got a stacked field of men getting ready to roll. Here's a look back at how the women's race ended up with Faulkner at 33 seconds down on the day. Lauren Stevens ends up in third place, and then Chris Doble-Hickok takes fourth with Morgan Chafin finding fifth place today, coming just about 2 minutes down on the day. So, Frankie, you think the men's race goes any similar to the women's race? I mean, after seeing that first solo breakaway, do you have a better feeling that a break might make it away today in the men's race?
sure we're going to see somebody lap the field. I think that was an extraordinary performance. But, it's going to be dwindled down to maybe a group of, I'm going to guess, 10 or 15 at the finish. I think the corners are going to take its toll on a lot of these riders. And so, it's going to be tough. It's going to be intense. And like usual, start's going to be key.
Yeah, we'll see the riders starting to fire up their trainers here pretty soon as they kind of rev up. There's an art to starting the race too, Frankie, isn't there? Just like the time trial, how every rider kind of has their own warm-up to be in the optimal physical place for the start of the time trial. Same thing with the pre-rides here. The riders really spend a lot of time trying to get dialed in, warming up, getting the engines hot before they start rolling.
No, and it is critical. The warm-up, obviously, at least, 30 minutes these guys are going to be riding beforehand before the start. And at the start, I think it's a matter of just kind of going almost flat out for a little bit just to make sure that you're going to be in that front group. You don't want to kind of, do 80% and all of a sudden you find yourself gapped. It's better to be safe in the beginning than sorry a little bit later on. So warm-up is key, and the start is key, and then after that things will settle in, and then you got to pay attention and react to the power numbers that are being put out as everybody starts racing with their own different strategy to be able to win. I mean, virtual Armed Forces cycling classic titles on the line, so this is going to be important. It's going to be an important race.
Frankie, we were talking yesterday about the different pain caves of the riders and some of the headwear choices as well. Looks like a few more riders have jumped on board with that. Mike Swart added like some sort of LED light to his background. That's in the bottom right of the 4-box there. I think that's Charlie Ravel in a Santa hat. So Santa Claus is coming to town today for the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. Timmy Bauer looks like he raided an LED factory and got his house all suited up. And then Matt Usborne is just doing the Matt Usborne thing up in the top left there as they're starting to ratchet it up here, getting ready to go, Frankie, and we're underway with the Virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Yeah, look at Usborne. I mean, it's a full-on sprint. He was out of the saddle just going almost as hard as he could for that start, to be able to make sure that he's going to be in a good spot. And so things are underway here. We got a massive group as the riders are underway, and we're going to see how this plays out. I don't think he was going to lap the field, but should be very exciting as we have almost 65 riders virtually on the course right now.
Yeah, pretty good turnout here for the virtual edition. Now, these riders did have to register ahead of time for the pro league of the Echelon Racing League. So each team gets to send, I think, 6 riders per squad to each race day. So very important time right now. Just like in real life racing, the splits are very often made in the first 5 kilometers, or at least the attempts at the splits are made in the first 5 kilometers. So we already saw the group about split in half back there at the back. So I think things are going to calm down a little bit because there are some big names missing from the group, but they'll get it worked out here pretty soon. Definitely a fast race to this one, though. Look how many riders are in the red zone here, Frankie.
Yeah, I'm seeing 8 watts per kilogram from, I think it was Swart, and then a Crane right now, 7.2, as everybody's trying to be able to make their way up. But look at how much it's strung out from our helicopter view. So, yeah, this is critical. Like I said, the start is critical, and so you got to go flat out. You don't want to get gapped off and have to put out, 500-600 watts for 30 seconds or 40 seconds just to be able to tag on to the back. And so, everybody's aware of that, and so it just makes it kind of faster and faster. So very good right now as everybody's kind of all grouped together as 48 kilometers to go. So a lot of racing to go and a long distance.
Yeah, you can bet some of these guys were watching the women's race, so probably some lessons learned there after watching the way that unfolded. I guess it tells you that a breakaway is possible on this course, and maybe gives the riders some hope that they might be able to get away from the group so that they don't have to try and out-sprint anyone in the group. Same thing happens in the Clarendon Cup every year, right, Frankie, right? It's the long-distance riders that are trying to get rid of the sprinters. I mean, that's pretty much how it always is, isn't it? Like last year, a great example, Eric Young and the Elevate team didn't want to take Corey Williams to the line. Legion was there up against Elevate in the men's race. Elevate laps the field, right? They got rid of the sprinters by keeping those guys out of the breakaway. So maybe they try and do the same thing here as Charlie Ravel going on a solo attack here early on, just a couple minutes into the race, and already Ravel in the red zone going solo away. And he's going to stay there. This is definitely a sustained attack, Frankie.
Yeah, 7.2 watts per kilogram. Amazing. Already lapped perhaps a couple riders that had technical difficulties because, you're lapping a rider in 2 laps. But look at that. Big watts coming from Ravel as he's attacking and trying to get everybody else to be able to chase. So, there's a lot of kilometers left to ride. So there's going to be a lot of strategy, a lot of tactics. We talked about with Faulkner learning about how to be able to handle these corners and how to be able to coast and go through it. So some of these riders are going to do the same thing. Yesterday with Doylestown was kind of a new experience with handling the way the RGT platform is. Today's going to be the same. And look at the effort coming out from some of these riders right now.
Yeah, this is Ravel with the Santa hat on right here. You saw him suffering on his way up to the front and then back into the group. Nice to see that you can keep it fun, keep a lighthearted attitude here for Charlie Ravel down in the pain cave. There he goes again, back off the front.
Yeah, how wet do you think that Santa hat's going to be after the end of an hour and something minutes? That thing, you're going to be able to wring that thing.
So funny you mentioned that. Yesterday, Mike Swart, who you remember was wearing the headband on his head yesterday, mentioned to our director that he thinks he might have dyed his hair because the sweat from the riding that corroded away the dye in the headband. And now he's got red hair. So he's just going with the permanent headband now, the permanent festive headband, because it became permanent when it melted onto his head during yesterday's session.
I have no doubt. that would be able to take place like that. But at least he's keeping it festive. He's got the lights kind of mixing things up as he's out of the saddle right now, trying to be able to stay up. Swart, yeah, he's got a big 10 watts per kilogram from Swart with that out of the saddle attack. Some of these riders is to not get dropped. Other riders is just to be able to stay in the group. That's where they're having to come out with these big numbers coming out of the turn. So nice to be able to see this is a nice group that's starting to form with 46 kilometers to go. We're only 4 minutes in, and so the pain cave has opened up. Entry fees have been taken, and everybody has paid their price.
Back to Ravel up at the front, who has been swallowed up by this group. Jonathan Crane now trying to have a go at it off the front here, as they all come back together. And Frankie, this is just like real life, isn't it? I mean, so many times we see these early breakaway attempts that just don't stick, and then it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes in, someone tries again, and then finally one will stick. Definitely already made the selection, though. I think this is the first kind of main chop, the main group of the day here, as that's down to about 20 riders, like you said, somewhere around 60 starting, so they've already had a pretty serious selection up at the front.
Yeah, look in the back there, McKinney hanging on for dear life, trying to be able to stay up there. Other riders just gradually going off the front. But you talk about, the riders going off the front and early on in a race, and then sometimes you don't see them later on. If we want to look at yesterday with Ollie Jones, right? Do you remember talking about Ollie Jones at all during the race in Doylestown? Not very much. He kind of stayed hidden, didn't he?
Yeah, that's. I think there's definitely an element of that in virtual racing. I was also looking at the power numbers yesterday, the average watts per kilogram, and I was surprised how it didn't really correlate with the winners. You would think that the riders that were winning would have the higher watts per kilogram, and the riders down in 8th, 9th, 10th would have lower watts per kilogram. But it's actually the other way. The riders that were winning were the most efficient riders, and so they had lower watts per kilogram because they didn't need to put out as many watts. So I kind of learned that yesterday while looking through the results and reading the riders' power. It seems like the efficient riders are the ones that do really well.
Yeah, the ones that can stay hidden and stay in that draft and stay right at around 200, 225 watts, give or take, are the ones that are going to have a lot of explosive energy for a little bit later on. And so with Ollie Jones, that was a perfect example of, but really didn't talk about him much yesterday in Doylestown. Yet a phenomenal rider. I found out he was he actually, Ollie Jones was the very first rider to win one of those Zwift Academy project. And so he got a ride with, he did 1 year with Dimension Data Racing. And so, talented rider, knows how to hide, knows how to save his energy, and I think that's what we have to look for today in a rider, to be able to do the exact same thing if they want victory.
Yeah, and, same story yesterday. We saw the desperate late race attack inside the last kilometer that didn't quite stick, and then the group swallowed them up, and Jones got the best of them in what was a virtual field sprint, I guess you would call it, or as close as you're going to get to a virtual field sprint. So, yeah, Ollie Jones of the Canyon Barbarians team. It was Ryan Ruderham, the rider, that tried to go away early, and you got to give him credit for the ride that he did yesterday. I mean, that was awesome. To have the guts to do what Ruderham tried to do yesterday, all the credit in the world to that guy.
No, Ruderham did an incredible ride, taking that kilometer flyer and only getting caught, I'll say, just meters from the line. Went from, first to, I don't want to say last, but pretty far back because of the speed coming from the peloton. But that was fun to be able to watch. So Ruderham taking a little bit different tactics this time, going out. 8.8 watts per kilogram. This is a huge number, and obviously there's so long to go in the race with such a long distance. He's going to need some help. I mean, you can't go solo for this long at 8-9 watts per kilogram. But look at the Warner coming up with 15 watts per kilogram, deciding he's going to try to take his chance to be able to get across. A big, big move right now.
Now watching the chase try to link up here, and they swallow him right there at, I think it was 60 meters, just a little bit farther out than Christy Tracy had at like 47 meters. But it was amazing how similar the men's race was to the women's race yesterday. I wonder if we're going to see the same today. Who's going to be that solo rider that fills the Jackie Godby role in this men's field? I don't know that we have one, Frankie. I don't know that there's anyone in this men's race as dominant as Jackie Godby is in the women's field.
I don't think it's dominant, but Ben Thomas has shown that he's strong. He's a points leader right now. Did a fantastic ride yesterday to be able to get second in that Doylestown, whereas, kind of missing out, Matt Usborne not picking up the points that he wanted. But Ollie Jones was pretty impressive, so I got to say. But Ben Thomas, second in Borrego, sixth at the Pattersburg. He won the Stelvio, and he talked about it, his mountain bike background. He likes the long, steady kind of rides, and it seems like this virtual platform is playing into his hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Really starting to learn how to race here on RGT. This was another guy who really didn't have a high average watts per kilogram in yesterday's race, but still ended up on the podium. So he definitely is figuring out how to ride on the platform. Like we said, one of the more efficient riders out there for Ben Thomas of Team Tour 2000, presented by Callis. And there he is in the series leaders jersey, again wearing that special pink jersey. His team normally wears, it's kind of a blue, like a royal darkish blue color, but wearing the series leaders pink jersey here on RGT in the Echelon Racing League.
Yeah, three-time national mountain bike champion from Great Britain. He's represented the World Championship 6 times doing the Marathon World's Mountain Bike. So, to be at that level, you're going to have some power and strength. And so he's been around for a while with this Ben Thomas coaching program. And so he's definitely, the points leader, and he's going to be thinking about protecting that. As you mentioned yesterday, sometimes with the race within the race. For Ben Thomas, this is definitely a race within a race. Protecting those points, but also trying to be able to get up there to be able to think about victory. So he doesn't want too big of a group. If it were to split up, he definitely does not want 6 riders going up the road.
Well, here is Usborne on the front, putting in an effort into the red zone, but dials it back immediately. And then you see the guys at the front of the field looking to cover that. Usborne is another rider who's been really aggressive in this one and consistent too, sitting in, I think, second place overall here. So Usborne is definitely one to watch. Blackburn is another one that was super aggressive. Look at the wattage by Blackburn here, doing 6 while everyone else is sitting between 2 and 3 here as he takes over at the front. It wasn't long, Frankie, before all these names came to the front, was it? I mean, these are names that if you had just started watching the Echelon Racing League yesterday, you'd have a pretty good idea of who the strong guys in this group are, and you're going to be seeing a lot of those same names up at the front today.
Yeah, we saw an elite group separate itself yesterday, and most of those guys are going to be here. We might have a few more that'll be able to tag on. Sometimes you make a mistake, getting gapped off on a corner, and so you're going to try to prevent that. And so you want to be able to kind of keep in contact as long as possible. So we could see a little bit larger group here because that riders that we're talking about, I think Ben Thomas was talking about it yesterday on Doylestown, that long gradual drag going up through the start finish, they said was extremely difficult. That was the hardest part of the race course. We have a more gradual type of course with any kind of elevation gain here. It's just a matter of the corner. So we could see a bigger group because it might not, technically not as hard a course, although the riders really are the ones that kind of adjust the intensity of the course. As Jones right now had a big attack at 9 watts per kilogram.
Ala Jones putting the field on notice, and look how many riders respond. You can always tell when the field's starting to respond because those numbers to the right of their name start to go red, and just about everyone inside the top 10 here is showing a red number as they try to respond to Ala Jones here off the front. Blackburn is up there, Usborne is there, Ravel is there, and Tom Thrall in 5th place. That is a dangerous split right there, and the field's going to respond to it. These are all guys that have had good results in the Echelon Racing League previous races, so those 5 names, no way you let them go away up the road.
Yeah, no way, and especially Ben Thomas is not going to let that go, or Patrick Wall is going to let that go. That was some heavy hitters right there, even though for 39 kilometers out. So they gradually has been able to bring them back in. Will Harden also being able to start moving up to the front as Blackburn continues to push the pace at 4.8 watts per kilogram. If we're looking at, I'm not sure if we're looking at Blackburn or Usborne, but if you see that power number, 430, 470 watts, that's a big effort. I mean, that doesn't come easy as these riders are counterattacking each other. It almost seems, Brad, like the riders, they want to split this race up. It's like they're trying to break up and form a group.
Yeah, it seems the strong riders definitely sense that they need to try and split this in some way. And like you said, that would be an best case scenario for those 5 guys in the group if they could get rid of someone like Patrick Wall that wasn't in that group of 5 and they were able to split it off. So I think maybe that's what Blackburn is trying to do, seeing if he can get some of these big riders on the back of the group, on the back foot, and then try and split it. So he only has to deal with maybe 5 or 6 really good guys in this group rather than 8 or 9 really good guys.
Well, it's gradually starting to look like, just like in real life, how it's starting to get a little bit more strung out, right? Almost wheel to wheel, not all bunched up. They're not spread out across the road, starting to form a little bit more into a single line in the front part of this group. And so that's going to present a little bit of a danger for some of these riders to have to pay attention to this, as Thomas now, our overall points leader, starting to gradually make his way back up, coming up through the start-finish line, getting ready to coast into turn number 1.
Oh, we watched Thomas go from the back to the front here as he worked his way through. And looking at the gap back behind these guys, nice view from our virtual helicopter up above here. See how they group up here going into the turn? That's the game slowing them down. Whether you like it or not, the game puts the brakes on you, on for you going into the turn. And the turns are accurately spaced, just like the real-life course in Clarendon at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. So you see the same kind of bunching up effect as the riders conquer all of the corners of the Clarendon Cup course.
See the kind of light blue Project Echelon jerseys. They have multiple riders that have been able to stay and make it into this first group as Ravel comes back up to the front, kind of keeping to push the pace. Thomas seems to be all over the place. He seems to be in the back and to the front, perhaps kind of trying to perfect, like in real life when you come up, if you have a course that has a 180-degree turn on it, sometimes you'll ride off the back. You let the group slow down. You just coast into the back of the group, and then you kind of find your way back up on the back end of the leaders without having to, de-accelerate a lot, hit the brakes a lot. It's like a little bit more consistent. Thomas almost seems to be kind of taking this sort of tactic of trying to coast and just kind of keeping it a little bit more consistent. So sometimes he's drifting to the back, making his way back up to the front, trying to keep a more consistent ride. And that could be a little bit of his strategy that he's applying here for the Armed Forces Classic.
Yeah, kind of the elastic, right? But as long as you keep the elastic together, it's fine. It's when the elastic snaps that you have the issue. And Ben Thomas has been stretching the elastic throughout the day out there so far. Frankie, we caught up with Kendall Ryan earlier for the women's race. She took us through her last lap, that amazing final corner that Kendall Ryan had. I also had a chance to catch up with the men's winner, Eric Young, from the Elevate KHS team. Take a listen to this, taking me through the last lap at Armed Forces Classic.
Eric, at this point, you're probably starting to think about the sprint, that final corner at 5 laps to go. This race, a lot of times, is won and lost in the sprint in the last corner. It's just over 200 meters out. Are you testing that corner throughout the race? I mean, I imagine that's a corner you have some intimate knowledge of because it's so important for this course.
For sure. That's actually a great insight that maybe most people wouldn't think about. But almost every time I go through the last corner, I'm thinking about that, actually. You take it in the hoods, you took it in the drops, you take way wide, you're almost on the lip of the curb going into the corner, and then you see the apex of the corner, you can see, sometimes there's the ramp up to the sidewalk that you can actually cut across. And so just whatever angle you want to take that at, and then where the exit of the corner is, if there's a curb that kind of comes in at you, whatever it is. But yeah, I totally agree. You definitely, throughout the race, that's at least for the guy that's thinking that he's probably going to want to go through that as fast as possible. Yeah, almost every race, the last corner, I'll be thinking about it the whole race.
Sam, final lap here. You guys are in perfect position. You see all the blue jerseys up at the front. At this point, are you already thinking this couldn't be going any better, or are you pretty much in the moment here? I mean, with a half lap to go, are you confident yet?
I am.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that many guys in front of you with that short to go on a technical course, we have total confidence in all the guys doing the lead out. So we know we're going to be in the right spot, and it's just a matter of sprinting as hard as you can for the last 200 meters.
Yeah, and then going through the last corner with 4 guys on the front, you can't ask for anything better than that. That doesn't work out better than that. So
yeah, if you were to write a book about criterium sprinting, that's pretty much what it would look like. Sam, you get to celebrate in 3rd place on this one. A lot of times the lead out rider ends up at the back of the race. Were you just dropping Eric off, or are you guys trying to get another podium spot for you?
Well, I mean, we're pretty much just all going to the line again because we have so many guys there at the end doing the lead out. I didn't even touch the wind. I didn't even have to really do anything because everybody in front of me did such a good job. So, yeah, super fun. And we always like the opportunity to do the double salute.
Man, that was fun to watch, Frankie. Not many teams that can go up against Legion in a crit like that and still take it to the line. Elevate had a great ride at the Clarendon Cup last year. Just goes to show you the level of talent that comes to race every year at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. They're always attracting the top teams. We saw that graphic earlier of the number of national champions that had raced at the event. It's just a really high caliber of field that comes to the Armed Forces Cycling Classic every year.
Yeah, very high caliber field. I mean, obviously starting back in 1998, it's been attracting, all the top riders. And, Elevate KHS last year, I mean, you have Sam Bassetti, Alfredo Rodriguez, Eric Young. I mean, it's just sprinters on top of sprinters. And so they took advantage of that, and it paid off with that victory for, Eric Young. The year before that was Eric Marcotte, who's another good sprinter. And the year before that, in 2017, one of the most dominant performances, with the United Healthcare Blue Train with Carlos Alzate. So it's strong guys and fast guys that win at Clarendon Cup. And so today's going to be the same. And Ruderham is trying to be that strong guy and the fast guys. He's really trying to be able to break this group apart. Nice gap, though, 30 meters. So we're going to see if this can kind of grow as he's just joined by Patrick Wall. So that's 2 strong names that you're well aware of, Brad.
Yeah, Ruderham, obviously the guy that went away solo yesterday, and then Patrick Wall of the EVOC bike team with him there in the white jersey. You're talking about some of the past winners here, Frankie. I always love a good walk down memory lane. The first winner of the Clarendon Cup, Scott Mercer, back in 1998. And then Todd Littlehales in 99, before Dave McCook in 2000, Jans Kortz in 2001. Then Mark McCormick in 2006, and Rassan Bahati in 2007. So many great winners on this list from past years at the Armed Forces Classic, aren't there?
Incredible. And Hilton Clark, I think, is a 3-time winner. And so these were the fastest riders racing in the U.S. at the time. And as that list goes on, with Hilton Clark again, Ty Magner, the 3 names that I had mentioned, these are the speed demons. And that's what brought them, they came out to Clarendon Cup because it was a very prestigious, because it is a very prestigious race on the U.S. circuit. Clarendon and Crystal City, something you always have to be able to attend to kind of put your stamp on your career for that year. It adds up in your palmares there. And so strong, fast guys every year end up doing well there.
Yeah, Frankie, a historic list of winners and a historic list of participants at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. You recognize this guy over at the right of the picture?
You're pulling things out from way back. Yeah, it's McCormick on the left with Saturn, Marty Jemison in the middle, and that's myself. This would be in 2000 at the race.
Yeah, this was the start line in 2000. It looks like there's even photographic proof of you being on the front at one point, Frankie.
I think it was the Chase group.
The gruppetto, maybe. Hey, it looks good in the picture. That's all that matters.
Yeah, maybe it was the gruppetto. I don't know. Great race, though. A ton of fun, whipping around those corners. And it's been a pleasure, Brad, working with you and covering it and announcing it, because it's just, the racing, it just keeps getting faster and faster and more intense and more intense. And so it's always a pleasure to be able to kind of be a part of.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be pulling these pictures up in 20 years. We'll be pulling up the replay of the first virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic. So we can have a laugh with guys like Alan Jones riding on the front here, doing right around 4.5K as they hit the line with 32K to go.
Brad, check out this split. This is like 6 or 7, maybe 10 guys. This is dangerous, and they got a pretty good gap. So somebody's going to have to react. I mean, this is danger, and that main group is going to have to be able to bridge across or put some teammates on the front and bring the whole thing back. But this is a very, very big group that's splitting apart from the riders in the back here. 32 kilometers to go, and so alarm bells should be going off.
Yeah, I'm looking at the guys at the back because those are the ones that are in the most trouble, and trying to look at the list to the left to see who didn't make it. But these guys definitely know that this is a turning point in the race, because some riders trying to take advantage of it. I think Jones and Wall probably realizing that they have the most to gain here by trying to get rid of some of these really good sprinters in this group. So this is a new mix of riders at the front, Frankie. This is not the same 8 riders that we've been seeing leading the earlier Echelon Racing League series. These guys have gotten together and said, okay, we got to do something about these other big names in this field. How about Thomas Thrall, for example? Not sure if he's in this group or not, but I think they might have gotten rid of Thrall in that split. That would be a great scenario for a guy that doesn't want to go with him, because he obviously winning 3 stages in a row at the Virtual Tour of the Gila, and there he is, I think, in the group. Yeah, just tacked onto the back. But, man, if you sense that a guy like Thrall was in trouble or might be off the back, you go full gas at that point, because that's a great rider to get rid of that you don't have to go up against in the finish.
Yeah, I was also looking like Ben Thomas, I don't think was there, but Thrall is, at the stages that he did at Gila, the way he was able to win criteriums, flat races, hilly races, was overall pretty impressive out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know that there are many riders that can, aside from obviously Jackie Godby, who did the same 3-race sweep in the women's race at the Virtual Tour of the Gila. But yeah, usually winning the criterium is much different than winning the road races. But Thrall swept the podium just 2 weeks ago at the Virtual Tour of the Gila, and here he is in the front group, sitting in 5th place out there today.
Yeah, it looks like that little group was... It's mixed up, because I think there's maybe a lapped rider in there, that number 26. So Patrick Wall's off the front, along with Ruderham and Jones. So those are the 3 riders that are in the front. The other 2 are riders that were lapped. And then we have the chase group, which was what you talked about with Thrall. Ben Thomas is somewhere in there, so he was missing from that front group. But our 3 leaders now still trying to be able to pull out a little bit of a gap. They only got about 10 meters, so there was definitely a bit of a reaction from the main peloton, as Jones right now is pushing the pace, 6-7 watts per kilogram. He realizes he has a little bit of a gap. He wants to try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, this guy has been super impressive today at the front of the field. Really has been the driver of this group and of this race so far, as another split goes off the front here. Look at this, about 6 riders going clear, and they got a little split behind them. Nice to see Dana checking in on the Facebook chat. Dana Williams, one of the great folks of the Armed Forces Cycling Classic that we're going to miss seeing this year, but nice to see that Dana's watching the broadcast here. Dana, I wish we were able to say hello in person, but we'll be back in 2021 for sure. And Jones already lapping guys here, working through some lap traffic. They are flying up here. Look at Bruce Bird, Monty up there. That's some new names getting up to the front here.
Yeah, a little bit bigger group, providing some new names to allow these riders to kind of mix it up and attack at different times.
And maybe some fresh legs, or teams bring in reinforcements. They have a roster of 12 riders that each team can choose from, and then they choose 6 to race in each day's competition. So that's another part of the art of virtual racing, is trying to decide which riders you field at which events, which riders you race in the series or in the schedule. Just like real life, Frankie, you had your time as a team director where you have to choose horses for courses, as they say, who's going to be best for which race. But sometimes that's tough to pick, especially in a time like this. It's got to be pretty hard to predict these athletes' ability in a situation like this. Certainly much harder than the real life thing in previous 2020 to pick who are you going to ride on your squad. Riders in the Zoom room looking pretty calm here.
Kind of showcase themselves. So I didn't realize there was only 6 riders allowed in each race, or 6 riders from a team allowed in each race. I never realized that was the situation.
Yeah, we'll look at some of those team rosters here in just a bit. I'm watching the group up at the front to see if this group splits again. I'm trying to figure out who the aggressors have been in those splits and see if we can get a look at them in the Zoom room to try to see what it looks like when you launch an attack like this out of the group. Look at all the white jerseys up in the top left. That is Evoc Bike, presented by Insured, the team of Patrick Wall and Tom Thrall, who we talked about earlier. Looks like they're pretty well represented in that group. And this looks like Blackburn was up at the front earlier. Jones going to get up there. I'm surprised to see Jones riding at the front so much. It just seems like he's spending a significant amount of time up there for Alec Jones. But maybe part of the plan, trying to keep it tough like we talked about earlier in the women's race. But I'm going to keep an eye on Alec Jones. He's sitting 3rd right now, just tapping out a nice 4 watts per kilogram.
He has been evident on the front. Jones keeping him, making sure he's in good position, I guess. Racing for team for 2000 Callis has been riding up there. And so, they want to put, I think you actually in this race, with the way the corners are and everything like that, if you find yourself in the back, you end up wasting more energy in the back trying to be able to go up to 7 and 8 watts per kilogram every time to stay in contact. It's almost easier to just put out a little bit more of a steady effort so that you can stay on the front, so that it's just a little bit more even keel and you don't really have those power spikes. And I think that's a little bit of what Jones is thinking there. One thing which we have to pay attention to, is we're talking about Alec Jones, but Ollie Jones is the one that won yesterday. So I'm not really sure where Ollie Jones is yet.
Yeah, should see Ollie Jones in the Canyon Barbarians kit. That's the kind of purple and blue kit. We'll keep an eye on him. Frankie, talking about this course, 5 corners. It's one of the most unique criterium courses in America. I don't know that you see many courses like this. I think only the last turn is the one that's a true 90-degree turn. All the other ones are like really wide or really tight. So you have to be a really good bike handler to race the real-life Armed Forces Cycling Classic. And I think that's true, like you were talking about on RGT as well. There's an art to riding the corners on this platform, just like the art of riding the Clarendon Cup course in real life.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, there's definitely an art in being able to handle these corners and dealing with the RGT platform, the way it kind of breaks you for the corners and making sure that you're in a good position for when you have to accelerate coming out of it. And in real life at Clarendon Cup, some of the corners are like no brakes, very, very fast, where you have to be able to kind of lean that bike over and know your limit. And especially coming out of the last corner, a lot of times we see crashes, but you're going all the way to the edge of the curb, trying to hold on to, that 30-mile-an-hour advantage to be able to keep your momentum going up to the finish. So a little bit similar here with a little bit of that learning curve of being able to sit in. Obviously, with a 100K race in the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, if you can sit in and conserve for as long as possible, you're going to be fresher at the end. even with this race, 25 kilometers to go, you had mentioned, Brad, when you look at those power numbers, it's not the ones that are way up high, at averaging 5-6 watts per kilogram. It's the ones that are right sitting around about 2.5, 2.3 watts per kilogram that are having advantage a little bit later on.
Guys like Tom Thrall that can just stay out of trouble, stay in the draft, stay in the group, and then shine when it counts in the last kilometer. Seem to have found the most luck, the most success so far on the RGT platform here as they tuck in. Now, you see the riders, some of them coasting in the group. That is accurate to the current wattage that they're doing. So when they take a break or stop pedaling, they drop their wattage to 0. That's when you see the avatars will stop pedaling. So just another sort of element you can watch out there to try and get an idea of what's going on and who's riding. As our helicopter flying through the trees. They're really getting pretty impressive with this helicopter technology now. They can chop right through the trees up there.
Blackburn being very, very aggressive, also racing for Restart Racing out of England. We talked about, racing yesterday, Ollie Jones out of New Zealand with the time change and when he had to wake up to be able to get ready for racing compared to like when he did the World Championships when he had to wake up at 3 in the morning. A little bit more civilized, waking up at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. Same with the 11 a.m. East Coast time for our friends over in Great Britain. But there's a lot of riders here from all sorts of different countries, which is kind of the beauty of the virtual platform is that not a huge time commitment. In other words, to bring a bunch of Europeans, foreigners, Australia, New Zealand, you can imagine how long the flight is to be able to come to a race and be able to stay in the U.S. and be able to do some races. This is in an instant. You just got to gather them up together, pick your best 6 and say, let's go. And it doesn't matter where you live. You can come here and compete on this virtual platform. And it's beautiful on how RGT has been able to put this together.
Yeah, we talked yesterday about how when the league was coming together, they were trying to figure out when each race would start. They had to take input from pretty much every time zone in the world when they got everyone together, finally got everyone together on a Zoom call. It was interesting watching all the different riders say, okay, well, that's a 3 a.m. start time where I am. And so riders had to do some math and figure out the time zone. But I think they got a good compromise. They have a different start time each day on the stage race days. So try and make sure that everyone has at least some opportunity to race in a somewhat normal hour at some point. Don't forget team merch at wearenations.com. Each team in the Echelon Racing League has their store open now, so they've all got t-shirts and hats and hoodies and all kinds of cool stuff in there. Teams do get a cut of the proceeds for each item sold, so a nice way to support your team, to show your support and get them some money back. So be sure to check out wearenations.com and get your official Echelon Racing League merchandise. We had some cool hats yesterday on the show, Frankie. We were talking about the headbands that the riders were wearing, and then the race director from Bucks County Classic, Laura Reppert, showed up with her, what she called a house hat that she was wearing. So maybe we need to get some hats in the merch store. We need to get a Matt Usborne specific merch store going on because this guy's been incredible on the front. We just saw him attacking earlier, and he's going to stay with it here. This is definitely a big move by Usborne. He is not giving up this one easily, not quite ready to throw in the towel yet. He's looking to see if anyone's coming with him, and Usborne is trying to shake things up here, Frankie.
Yeah, Usborne trying to be able to go away, and he's not messing around with any hats. I mean, if you look at when we saw the video of his pain cave, it's like 4 white walls and his trainer in the middle of it. It's almost like he's in cell block H training for RGT platform. And so he's on the attack right now as Usborne's trying to be able to go away. 5.5 watts per kilogram, definitely a reaction from many of the other riders. You got to remember, Usborne's second overall in the point series. Ben Thomas picked up big points yesterday, and so if Usborne wants to be able to make up some of that, he has to put in a good finish today.
Yeah, consistency important here in the league as riders look for points on each day of racing and then also points in the general classification overall as well. Usborne getting swallowed up as Evok Bike puts another up on the front here. And pretty amazing that he's just going to try and reset here, Frankie. It's really just a game of efforts. It's, like you said yesterday, burning matches and then just trying to measure those matches before going again.
Yeah, interesting. Tom Thrall sitting in the back there, kind of coasting and just kind of gauging his effort as he's kind of going back and forth in between the group. And so different riders, everybody trying to pick a little bit of a different way to survive this. A little bit of a lull going on right now, though. 2.9, 2.6, 3. If you're on the front, obviously your watts are a little bit higher because you're hitting that wind. You're not getting the advantage of a draft, but still 22 kilometers to go. And so I think the riders right now are they're content that they made the group, that they're still staying in the group, and now they're just trying to follow the wheels until we get maybe a little bit further down into crunch time, where they might think that they can actually achieve a sustained effort to be able to make it to the finish. Right now, I think we're still a little bit too far out for one or two riders to be able to make it all the way to the end.
Yeah, for sure. Probably a little too early for the breakaway to go, and I think Usborne quickly realizing that. You saw him clearing out his sinuses there as he wraps up that attack early. We were trying to figure out where he was. I think it might be on a balcony. You see the natural light coming from the right side of the screen. It might be on like an apartment balcony or something. Not sure where he is. We'll see if we, I think he's saying yes. We'll see if we can figure that out.
That's just the light coming in through the cell block windows down onto his plain white walls.
They give him a little bit of sunlight to improve the morale over there in cell block H.
Yeah, I was thinking. And then Usborne, I was thinking about this too with Usborne, looking this up really quick here. So he's out of Vancouver with Above and Beyond Cancer. And, out on the balcony, again, we talk about the natural cooling element, right? It's going to be cold. And so that's something that I think a lot of these riders are taking into consideration, depending on where they're setting up their man cave, depending on where they live. If it can be in the garage where it can be like all around cooler, or out on the balcony where it's all around cooler, so you don't have to worry about so much of that ventilation, that ventilation part with the fans to be able to keep that core temperature down. Because that really is, a super critical key component to being able to do well.
Yeah, in fact, we even saw some riders racing with like ice packs down their back, right? You can see a lot of riders have the big fans on them. I'm going to put Patrick Wall on here as well. You see how his jersey is flying off of his back? He's got a massive fan in front of him that is constantly blowing cool air on these riders. And like you said, that is one of the, if not the most important environmental aspect of trying to have a good ride. Keep your body core temperature down, because once it gets too hot, just like your car engine, Frankie, there's no coming back from overheating or overriding. And so it's important that they make sure they don't redline in a scenario like this.
Yeah, once you overheat, it's hard to cool down. Patrick Wall with that jersey flying reminds me of that commercial where that person was sitting in the chair and the speakers would go on, and then it'd be like blown.
For JBL commercial or Bose. I used to have a poster hanging in my basement of this ad. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it was for JBL. And then, the speakers come on and the guy's just being blown backwards. That's what Patrick Wall is experiencing with that fan. But, he's doing a great ride because he's still in that front group, and he's just kind of pacing himself. And you can see, which is very different than some of the other platforms, is the way you modulate the riding. They talked about how tactical it is, being able to coast and then put in the power, not just going flat out all the time. And so that's kind of makes this racing a little bit different, and kind of actually it's more engaging. You have to be even more focused than usual to be able to control that power output so that you're not just kind of surging all the way to the front or getting dropped off the back.
Yeah, I don't think I realized how important it was to play the game during the race. When I first started watching these RGT and Zwift races, I mean, like you said, you have to be constantly watching the power and evaluating the effort that you're putting in to make sure that you're not wasting energy or not getting dropped out of the group. It's much harder to stay in the group on the virtual platforms than it is in real life. And you certainly, I think, feel the draft a lot stronger in real life as well. So it's a surprisingly tough for riders to try and stay in the group on the virtual racing platforms.
No, I would agree with you.
Above and Beyond Cancer teammates, Andy Bauer. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I was just gonna say it's interesting to me learning like how they have to modulate the corners. The corners thing is like what's making it very different than usual. But he had a nice setup there in the bottom of the screen there. Look at all the water bottles there, all his old race numbers. He got a trophy. He's got the lights, kind of in a Christmas spirit.
I'd like to see the view in front, though. I wonder what his setup looks like. Look at the big industrial fan behind him. He's got one of those, I think those are used to like dry carpet up on the table behind him. So he's got fans coming from all angles out there today.
Well, Bowen right now, 5.5 watts per kilogram, Jamerzik 4.5. Everybody's kind of just, again, they're following 18 kilometers to go. They've been racing for 42 minutes. We saw the women finish, what do we see about, I mean, when I kind of paid attention, it was a 1:17, but I think Godby had finished probably a couple minutes earlier because that was when the second group finished. So I think the women finished right at about an hour 15. So we're going to see, I think, a little bit over an hour coming in for the men here as, usual suspects. We see Usborne, Blackburn, Wall, right? Ben Thomas has stayed hidden out of there. I don't even know if yesterday's winner, Ollie Jones, is even in the race or in this group. So that's going to be interesting. And then a little bit later on, I'm sure we're going to discover some other names that we really haven't seen that have been able to stay quiet and stay kind of refreshed, as you could say, because they're not using as many watts from being exposed.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if the winner comes out of this group, but it's not one of these like 6 or 7 guys. I'm looking down at who's in like 7th, 8th, 9th place, because a lot of times those are where those guys are kind of hanging out. Plager, a great example, the German rider, riding really strong on the front early in the day, and then I think kind of figured it out that, hey, I can just sit in. I don't really need to worry about this stuff. So I'm kind of watching the bottom end of this group to see if there's any sleeper names in there that might have a shot at the end of this one in 17.7K from now.
See Hutchings on the front right now. That's I don't want to say the first time he's been up there, but one of the few times that he's been up there. Group, I think we're going to see this group come down to the finish. I think it's going to kind of stay like this. I don't see a big difference with a group of 10 separating. I can't believe he still has a Santa hat on. I can't imagine, like we talk about overheating. Charlie, I think would definitely be overheating. Bruce Bird's got a nice setup there. Usborne still plugging away, trying to be able to keep up with everybody. But the attacks just keep going and going and going, and that's kind of what's different on the virtual platform. In real life, you can sit in and guys will attack and they just kind of like drift off the front and come back. Every time there's a draft here, you have to respond. You have to put out the equivalent amount of watts to be able to keep up, or you're just going to get dropped. And so that's what makes this virtual racing so difficult during a race like this, is that you can't just sit in and let the attacks happen and let them come back on their own. You have to respond to these attacks and put out almost the matching power.
Just like Usborne is doing here, as he saw that kind of pick up a little bit and then immediately was able to respond and get back into the group. Frankie, you know who's also here? We saw this guy yesterday. You remember Jim Rozic, one of the best placed riders in this race, still rocking the vest and tie. I'm not sure if it's the same one from yesterday, though, and I am deeply concerned that it might be.
I'm not going to comment on that, but we're going to assume that he did a wash load. So, do you think it's a shirt and a tie, or is it a T-shirt that has like the tie like kind of ironed on it?
I think the tie is printed on there. I'm not sure, but I think the vest is separate.
Yeah, I think the tie is.
We got our best,
and he's wearing a hat also. He has a hat on also, which is, I love the festive hats. I mean, that's kind of good, kind of like mixing it up there, but. Nice kind of mixing it up with a little bit of I wouldn't call it a uniform. I'd call it just having fun with the races.
Oh, here's a guy
he
who's
doesn't look
not
like he's having fun. You're right.
Usborne from Cell Block H is solo off the front here, and he's got no one coming with him here. So this is a pretty interesting scenario for Matt Usborne, the Above and Beyond Cancer presented by Bike World rider. Saw some of his teammates back in the group, so he does have guys back there with him, but it seems like Usborne is just trying to stay on the gas all day today. Trying to count the riders in this group. Blackburn, Ravel, Hardin, Thrall.
That's funny. That's exactly what I was doing right when you said that. I was like, that spread out view, I was starting to try to count the number of riders. I'm going to guess maybe about 15.
I see. Okay, so here's a great name, like we were talking about earlier, Neil Ostenfeld. Really strong rider in this field for the Evoc bike presented by Insured Team. Haven't really seen him in this group a lot, but I just saw his name pop up somewhere inside the top 15. So I think he's in here somewhere. But that's a great example of a rider who hasn't really spent any time on the front today, but could definitely be a threat when this one goes to the line. So they're out there. They're sitting in. They're biding their time and just waiting for the last 15K of this race. Another good example there of how the turns affect the dynamics in the group. See how it split up so much going into the turn, then coming out. And then here's Ostenfeld in the red trying to cover that gap. He's got to try and shut it down. So Ostenfeld really doesn't go to the front a whole lot. And I think that's also partially because he's figured out how to kind of feather the power. See how he got out of the saddle there but didn't quite make it up to the front of the group. I think Ostenfeld is one of the guys that can play this game better than anybody else.
That's a good way of putting it, is feathering the power. Some of these riders have figured out how to be able to do that. And Ostenfeld obviously is going to be a challenger at the end. I mean, he was 5th at that Pattersburg, one of the first Echelon Racing League events, which had some tough climbs in it. So he has the power to be able to do well, and that's exactly why he's in this group. I mean, we see that Hangar 15 looked like McKinney was doing a good job, but look, a lot of these guys in the red coming out of those corners, and so they're all trying to figure out how to balance that out. As we had talked about, Ostenfeld is someone we hadn't talked about. Thrall has definitely been evident. Ben Thomas, though, has also been staying relatively quiet. He had a good sprint yesterday to put him in 2nd, so Ben Thomas knows he's going to wait. He knows he has speed. He knows he has a good sprint. So I think he's going to wait for the end of this race and try to just rely on it being a field sprint and try to take some points that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yesterday you were talking about Ben's interview where he was kind of comparing virtual racing to his background of mountain biking. I thought it was going to be explosive, right? A lot of explosive moments in mountain biking, but he said the cross-country mountain biking is much more like the road races on the platform, which, I mean, it's cross-country. I know there's the long, sustained efforts, but, the explosive climbs up the hill, going over an obstacle or rock, something like that. I thought that might translate into virtual racing. He said, no, not really the case. It's really more about that long, sustained power. This is the first-person view of Tom Thrall, so this is what it would look like if you were virtual Tom Thrall sitting in the group here. I like how the camera even leans. It's very authentic, isn't it? Leaning into the corners. Now you just need a guy yelling at you and some people cheering you on from the side of the course.
Just a few more cowbells, maybe some bells for some preems, and we got the race the way it should be.
RGT always says that.
Hutching doing a good job. Ostenfeld
as possible.
They're doing a fantastic job. Like you said, the leaning of the bikes. I mean, I've never seen that before. And also just with Magic Roads, you can kind of create your own road. You can create your own platform to be able to do races on. They came up with being able to design and invite your own riders for a time trial, or you can invite your own riders for an elimination race. You can create your own course. You can decide what kind of parameters or profile you want with it. So very creative and innovative as RGT continues to kind of listen to the feedback and continue to grow the platform.
Yeah, now we just need some, guys showing up in a 1999 Civic with a $10,000 bike on top, sleeping in the back, and then racing the night before. It'll be a fully authentic experience of American bike racing.
That would work. I want to have a pace car. I think it'd be cool to be able to have a pace car, and you put the logarithm, like whoever's in the front, the pace car always stays, 10 meters in front, and you'd have a pace car for the criteriums. I think that would be kind of neat. The problem would be, which we would have ran into in the women's races, that when the pace car is running into the lapped riders, I'm not sure if it might be able to go around them.
All right, Blackburn sitting on the front. I want to bring Rob Laybourne back in, race director. We saw the challenge coin presented to Jackie Godby in the women's race, and I understand our pro men going to be getting the challenge coin as well, Rob.
That's correct. We have a coin right here once again, in front of the camera. It has some symbolism. That you can see the, let's see, where are we? The 3 stars there represent the number of years for the main elements of the event. So the Clarendon Cup, the Crystal Cup, and the Challenge Ride. We also have all the flags on it that represent all the nations who have won the race. So it's very important to us. We have a little inscription here as well in Latin. I won't read the Latin because I'm not a Latin expert, but it means where champions compete. So we're really proud to be able to offer this to the winner of today's race.
And Rob, explain to us the symbolism and significance of the challenge coins in the military community.
Yeah, so a challenge coin is provided to individuals that have done something, very beneficial to the esprit de corps or to their job, and so they typically are presented to guys that have done good stuff, and so we as part of the with the connections with our military around here with the Pentagon and all the armed forces, it's something that we adopted back when we first got that connection with the Air Force in about 2009, and we've just have been using it ever since. So I think it's a great tradition, and it provides the winners with a keepsake, and it's a tradition we'll continue on.
And what do the numbers represent? I saw 20, 14, and 13 on the back of the coin.
Yeah, so the three main elements of our race weekend are the challenge ride, which kicks the whole weekend off, and that's our that'll be our 13th year, and then 14 is the number of years for the Crystal Cup, and then on the white star on the left there, that's 23. That's the number of years for the Clarendon Cup. So those are the three main elements of our event, and of course our main logo in the middle, and right below the logo is the Latin that's inscribed, the translation meaning where champions compete.
Very cool. Nice token of these riders' wins here at the Virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic. Thank you, Rob. Meanwhile, Matt Usborne at 10.5 kilometers to go, trying to go solo again here off the front. Frankie, this guy just cannot get enough of trying to get away from the field.
No, he had decided that was a big attack that he decided to do right there. 10 watts per kilogram coming into turn number one. The braking slowed him down as he coasted and came out of it. Right at about 5 watts per kilogram. But this is causing that reaction in the back from Blackburn, Wall, McKinney. A lot of these riders are having to get back up into that 5-6 watts per kilogram. You look at 415, 430 watts to be able to bring back Usborne. So he doesn't seem to be wearing down. He almost, he seems to continue to attack even with 10 kilometers to go and almost an hour of racing. Usborne, we saw him sprinting at the very beginning for the start, and he continues to attack. So obviously very, very strong and very fit, and wanting to be able to, I think he's motivated to make up for the mistake that happened yesterday when he wasn't as far up there in the sprint as he had hoped.
And look at Pleger coming forward here as well, the German rider making an appearance up on the front. Remember, we talked about him earlier as one of the riders that was kind of sitting at the back, but now it looks like he's maybe sensing that now's the time to get up there inside the last 10K. So he's starting to move up and make an appearance here. And look at the split happening off the front here, Frankie. These two guys are clear. And again, if they can just work together and stay on the gas, I make it sound so easy over the mic, but that's what you have to do in this game. It's the long, sustained effort. And unfortunately, that's the hardest part of this game.
Yeah, if they can hook up, these would be two strong riders. Pleasure's been kind of staying hidden, kind of resting up, trying to be able to save his watts for a move a little bit later on, final 10 kilometers. This is what I had talked about earlier, kind of having to wait until you could make a mark where you think you can make it to the end. And Usborne and Pleasure, I believe, they think they can make it, but man, Harden is putting out some big numbers to be able to bring it back. So everybody else not willing to kind of let these two riders have their way right now.
Well, there's certainly a lot of looking around, or I guess virtual looking around, saying, you go get him, you be in charge of the chase. Nobody wants to do that extra work to bring back these riders that are launching the attack, and so they're kind of probing, just testing, waiting for that move that's going to go and stay clear. It's going to be a mistake by the field, I think, if a group is able to get away here at 8.7K to go. Usborne, Blackburn, Harden, Jones, Ruderham, all the same guys up here at the front. Look where Pleger is, back at the back, sitting in that group, although little gap forming. I don't think it's enough to worry about.
Yeah, Pleasure is going to have to recover after that big effort that he just did. trying to go away with Usborne. But that's a little bit of a danger in the back there. That split with 2 or 3 riders coming off the back, they're going to have to put in some big red numbers to make contact again. And pretty much they need to do it immediately right now, because with 8 kilometers to go, the race is only going to start heating up. It's going to start getting quicker and quicker as different riders are going to start thinking about how to strike out. Just like in real life or real racing, there's strengths and weaknesses. Some guys are going to have a good sprint. Some guys are not going to have a good sprint. And so we're going to see the attacks coming from the riders that don't have a lot of speed at the end to try to break this race apart, and the other riders sitting in trying to conserve themselves for that final mad dash to the line.
Here are your first 4 on Zoom with Usborne, Wall, Blackburn, and that's Will Harden down in the bottom right. Will, another guy who's been really strong in this group, aggressive today, but we just haven't seen a lot of him at the very front of the group. So we might see Will Harden make an appearance later on in the day. He was super strong yesterday, Frankie.
Yeah, incredibly strong. And so I think we're going to see some of these, the same names, usual suspects start coming to the front and, getting ready to, fight it out and fight for position to see who's going to be, the virtual winner of the Clarendon Cup. And so, coming up on an hour of racing, that's normally, these guys can handle that pretty well. The last 15 minutes might be a little bit different when we start getting into crunch time and they're having to put out another 500, 600 watts for, 1 minute at a time or 2 minutes at a time.
I'm seeing a lot of riders putting zeros into the power meter right now in a little break in the action. There's not much downhill on this course, but these guys have definitely found a little section where they can take a little rest and then get right back to it. It seemed like the whole group was kind of coasting there for a while. That's probably the last setup here to the final 7 kilometers of racing here, Frankie. Again, if you're not a sprinter, if you don't think you have a good shot of taking a win out of this group, go now. I mean, attack from 7 kilometers out. That's probably your best bet, as there are some really, really strong sprinters in this group. Blackburn and Usborne continuing to drive up here. I see one Canyon Barbarians jersey in there. I'm not sure if that's yesterday's winner, Ollie Jones, or not. See if we can figure out where he is in the group, but he should be wearing that purple and blue kit of the Canyon squad.
Blackburn on the attack again, 5 watts per kilogram, trying to spread out. We've seen a lot of aggressive racing from Ravel, who's been following a lot of these moves with Jones. So still the group's, it hasn't, once this group of 20 kind of formed, really, we hasn't seen a whole lot of change in the last 10 or 15 kilometers. It's like these guys are all pretty even with their strength right now.
Yeah, just kind of made that initial split and then tapped away the kilometers, and now it's 6.2K to go. Things starting to heat up a little bit, but Frankie, this still is not an aggressive race in this group. I would say that these guys are, as the French say, straight chilling right now.
I would agree. Right now, I'm not seeing anybody too willing to be able to risk anything right now, and I think that's what it is. They're minimizing their risk. They're just going to kind of keep riding around until a little bit later on. They don't want to take that risk of not having a chance to go for victory, burning themselves out, or not gaining some points, because that's something to think about too. Is the overall point series is you don't want to end up with absolutely nothing by taking too long of a flyer and then getting swarmed at the end. And that's something that we've seen in the women's race and in the men's race. How fast that field can come up on you and pass you in the final meters to the line. So if you're going to take a flyer, you're going to have to try to be able to time it pretty much perfectly, because the speed from the main group is just incredible with the amount of power that they can get out by taking advantage of the drafting that they get when they're following the other sprinters, kind of getting that launching pad towards the line.
Coming up on 5K of racing to go as these guys get ready to set up for the final gallop to the line here at 5.3 kilometers to go. If you've enjoyed watching the racing today, I encourage you to join us for the Echelon Racing League Amateur Series again as we get ready for the Gateway Cup December 26th through 27th, the next stop on the Amateur League Series. You can register at echelonracingleague.com. Just click on races and pick one of the 4 categories. They also have a nice chart in there. If you're racing on Zwift, you can figure out your Zwift category and then figure out how that translates over to RGT. So when you get that smart training for Christmas, you can set it up and get ready to go racing December 26th.
It's amazing the different styles of some of the riders. I mean, Patrick Wall kind of all over the bike, getting out of the saddle, in the saddle. Will Harden just looking like he's just kind of cruising in the lower right-hand corner. His hair doesn't even look wet, and he's just kind of like coasting and looking around. Yet we have an hour of racing with an average of probably, 4.3, 4.5 watts per kilogram. Oosburn looks like he's out chopping like 10 logs and like on his last breath, but he's been like that for like half of the race. And so I can't even imagine what his pain threshold is like, but we're getting down to 4.5 kilometers to go, almost the final portion of this bike race, and everybody is still together. At least these top 20 that separated off early on are still all together. Nobody's been able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's amazing with all the efforts that we've seen on the front. Nothing has sticked, and more importantly, none of these guys have blown up. Like Blackburn, Oosborn, these guys that have been these guys have been riding on the front for like the better part of 45 minutes. I mean, they don't even look weak. They're not even starting to sit at the back. It just goes to show you how strong some of these guys are in the group.
Yeah, nobody in this group is hanging on for dear life. They're all part of the race. They're all ready to attack. They're just waiting for their opportunity. It's super impressive, the amount of power and how fit these virtual riders are. And so they've been preparing for all of this, and this is part of the Echelon Racing League, and they're ready to show their skills right now and getting down, in a little bit, 3.5 kilometers to go.
It's going to be a great sprint coming to the line here. There are a lot of really strong guys in this group, and I have no inkling of this going one way or another. This is going to be a really tough one to pick. One thing's for sure, Blackburn is vying for the most aggressive rider of the day here. I mean, it seems like Blackburn and the Evoc bike rider has been off the front. Oosborn for sure from Above and Beyond Cancer. Jones has been up there a lot. We saw Alec Jones early on.
Same with the R. Rasmus. Let me find it. Oh, Ruderham is another one that has been up there a lot, being pretty aggressive. Three kilometers to go. You see those red jerseys kind of joining forces, making sure that they're at the front. And that's part of teams coming together, but it's more so fighting for position for the front. These guys realize that you're not, if someone starts to attack and they go off at 10 watts per kilogram, and you're 10 guys back, you're not going to be able to make up that distance and be able to match that and catch somebody when they're attacking that hard. And so this fight for position just keeps increasing the speed. 35 kilometers per hour. We're going to see that continue to climb as we're getting into the remaining kilometers of this race.
I can't get over the way that Blackburn has been riding so aggressively on the front here. This guy is crushing it, setting tempo at the front of the group for the last 3 kilometers. They're down to 2.5K to go now, and Blackburn, the only rider in the yellow here. You see a few riders in the red trying to close it down, but he is definitely doing more work up here on the front, or was, as now he gets swarmed by the front of the group. So it's going to start to get real chaotic real quick here, Frankie, at 2.3K to go. And they're quickly running out of time to try to launch that late race attack. You got maybe another 500, 600 meters for that one to go off, and then you just have to resign to the fact that this is going to be a field sprint.
I would agree with you because the speed's just going to keep increasing. When we saw, in the backstretch, 35 kilometers per hour, right now coming up on 40 kilometers per hour, these riders know there's, what will this be? Maybe 2 laps remaining? I'm going to guess with 2 kilometers to go. So 2 laps to go, 2 kilometers to go. The pace is just going to continue to get high. The fighting for position, which is, same as in real life. Everybody wants to be in the front. There's only so much space, but the watts are going to start kicking up here pretty soon as these guys start fighting it out for victory.
Bird back up at the front before getting swarmed. Hutchings, a new name up here in third. The British rider starting to put his nose into the wind.
Ben Thomas showing himself in that red jersey, right? Ben Thomas is with the points leader, so he's starting to get himself into a position here. Oh, look at Jamerzik and Blackburn, the two teammates maybe perhaps taking a little bit of a flyer or just maybe a power surge getting them to the front. But the two riders from the same team in the green jersey have just made their way to the front. And Usborne, again, coming right over the top.
Well, here we go as we get ready to send these guys out for the final lap of racing at 1.2K. Starting to see the efforts once again. Usborne in the bottom left of that 4-box, going all in on the move here to try to get away as he's going to have a little lead. They're going to hit the line here in just a minute, and they'll be getting one lap to go here. So, Frankie, final lap of the Virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic, and I think we've got an honorary bell ringer here.
Good job, Rob.
That was Laybourne with the bell that the 10-time finishers of the Challenge Ride get each year. They have an honorary cowbell that the riders that have done it 10 times get. That's what you just heard there. Back to the action. I think this might be, is it Bruce Bird up there on the front?
Well, Ruderham is attacking and Usborne is following. And so, I mean, we're talking 10 watts per kilogram. He took a flyer with 1 kilometer to go. Usborne did. 3 guys reacted to it. The rest of them is split off the back. Looking for some of those sprinters to be able to take it. Looking for where Ben Thomas is. And now we see a move coming in. 300 meters to the line as Harden is in a great position to possibly take victory.
Well, Harden goes early. He's got Usborne on his wheel. Blackburn is there as well. Now Harden and Usborne going to link up. They've still got about 300 meters to go. They're going to get swarmed up the right side and absolutely smashed in the last 200 meters. Here comes Jonathan Crane at 100 meters to go. Evok Bike is going to get one to the front. That's Neil Ostenfeld. I told you Ostenfeld could do it today, and I think he held on for the win. He did it. Neil Ostenfeld of Evok Bike takes the win.
Ostenfeld, the secret rider, staying hidden in the peloton the entire time, resting up until it counts. And man, Brad, you had called it. Ostenfeld, we hadn't seen him for much of the race, but we knew he had the power to be able to do it. What a sprint, and timed it out perfectly from Evok Bike.
Oh, man, that was awesome and about as good as it gets. I mean, you talk about textbook bike racing. Frankie, as an announcer, I live for days like this where you make a call on air and then it comes true in real life. There's no better feeling. It's like nailing a lead out when you're a bike racer.
And this is the first time for that to happen for you, right?
Right. I'm just getting used to the feeling. Sorry, I know it happens all the time for you, but I'm still excited because it's my first time accurately predicting a race.
You picked it. You picked it out, that's for sure. I mean, he showed up right at the right time, and you had mentioned that he was saving himself, and so that worked out perfect for Evok Bike. So that's a big win. That's going to put on some valuable points for Evok Bike and for Ross towards that overall point series. But, man, that group of 20 never could separate. Look at these guys, sweaty, tired. I'm sure they're hungry also.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, let's go straight to it. Neil, can you hear me here?
Yeah, how's it going?
All right, man.
Ooh, what a race.
First of all, congratulations. You look terrible, which is part of racing on the virtual platform.
Yeah, man. Oh, woo.
Hey, I'll let you catch your breath a little bit here, and we'll try and keep this as short as we can. But what an exciting finish. I tagged you early in the race because we didn't see you a lot at the front. Was that your plan today, to try to hang out at the back as much as you could?
Yeah, I was just trying to save as much as I could. It went pretty well yesterday. I went a little bit late yesterday, kind of came up short. And then coming out of that last corner today, I was in pretty good position. But I came flying through everybody, and I was like, oh, no, I went too early this time. And I was going to get swamped, but I just managed to hold everybody off. But
how much were you guys talking among the team? Is there a lot of communication with your Evok Bike squad?
Today the plan was pretty much just sit in. I think Patrick was like, I might see what happens. I think he got off the front in a little dig midway through. But with that course being like it is, it's just so hard to stave off the pack when everybody kind of piles into the corners. But
yeah, the criterion racing certainly unique.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just seeing Tom got second. Sweet.
All right, grab yourself something to recover and cool down. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and take a look at the results. Neil Austenfeld, your winner today. We'll be right back from the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Thanks, guys.
The world is changing.
I'm looking to do things better.
To improve.
Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's right.
I embrace change.
I seek adventure and discovery.
I explore the unexplored.
To know the unknown.
Even in the toughest moments, we ride together.
Even in the moments when we're at our limits.
We support each other. It's time to move up a level.
To push that little bit harder.
Changes we make now will make the future better for all.
The efforts we put in today
will pay dividends tomorrow.
We all have the power to up the game.
To build something better.
It's not time to play.
It's time to get real.
It's time to be a game changer.
As an athlete, getting marginally better is one thing. Getting exponentially better puts you in a whole new ballgame. Biomoto uses a proprietary digital process to capture movement at 200 frames per second and 70 sensors per foot to measure ground-based forces, resulting in advanced motion analysis that's up to 10 times more accurate than orthotics. It's the data generated by this process that allows Biomoto to construct custom insoles that make athletes faster, stronger, and more stable, and results in an unprecedented 95% success rate.
All right,
welcome back. Wrapping up the 2020 virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic Clarendon Cup, where Evoc Bike has just dominated at the front of the pro men's race. We just had a word with Neil Austenfeld, our men's winner. And now let's grab a word with Tom Thrall from the Evoc Bike eSports squad. Tom, an incredible ride for the Evoc Bike squad today. You guys going 1 and 2. This has got to feel good. I saw you guys going crazy in the Zoom room. Are you guys on Discord as well, or how are you communicating?
Normally we are. I actually wasn't on Discord today because I had some tech issues yesterday. So I thought I would just try my best to stay focused on keeping everything working. But we've raced together enough this year that we know kind of how to work together even without being on Discord. So we're really kind of functioning well as a team right now. So it's pretty awesome.
Hey, what was different today for you than yesterday? You had a tough day yesterday. Was it a tech issue for you yesterday or just the corners?
No, it was a tech issue. I was actually feeling really, really good. And I was liking the course. And then halfway through the race, something just crashed. So again, I don't know if it was RGT or it was my iPad or whatever I was using. But it was the first time I've ever had any issues. So a little bit unfortunate. Just like a real life mechanical, sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, you got a karma rebate today. Everything went right and found your way up to the podium for second place. Is RGT getting more comfortable for you? I know you talked about getting used to the platform earlier. You've had a few races under your belt now. 5 or 6 races on RGT for you.
Yeah, so this was, 4.5 after yesterday. So, yeah, starting to get used to it. But today I just felt so comfortable. I'm just learning how to kind of take the corners properly, learning how to draft, and I can just relax and get my heart rate down and then actually put the efforts in when I want to, instead of just keeping my heart rate up the entire time and just panicking.
Right on, Tom. Congratulations. Is there any official celebration for the EVOC bike team? Is there any champagne or anything after a win like this?
I hope so. So you can send it to 905 20th Avenue South in Nashville. So I'll be waiting for something.
All right. You keep an eye out for the UPS man. We'll get that there as soon as we can. Top Thrall, congratulations. Second place.
Thank you.
Well, Frankie, a solid day of racing out there for our pro men's field as we take a look at where things ended up with Thrall in second. Charlie Ravel holds on for third place. Ryan Ruderham, who we saw take the bold solo move yesterday, in fourth place, with Plager ending up in fifth, Ned Bowen in sixth, and Patrick Wall ends up seventh place. Look at the splits, though. Everyone inside the top 8 was inside of a tenth of a second. And then Matt Usborne coming in ninth, the first guy to go outside of 1 second down on the winner. That's a close finish.
It's incredible on how you have to time that sprint perfectly, but Alstenfeld did exactly that. Tom Thrall making up for the electronic mistake or that whatever happened to him yesterday. But if you look at that list, I mean, it's a lot of the regular names, but the one that's missing is Ben Thomas, right? He's not on there, so not really sure where he ended up. But exciting race. The amount of power that some of these guys are putting out, repeatedly for over an hour is extremely impressive. And I think, for the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic, I think the RGT platform did a fantastic job to honor the race the way, it usually is raced in real life. So a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, Rob, seeing the virtual Armed Forces Cycling Classic banner, a computerized version. I think normally you would have only seen that when you sent it off to the printer, right? Send the PDF file to get the signs printed. But now you have your own virtual world out there, and we can come back and race on the Clarendon Cup course anytime we want.
Yeah, it's been great. You guys did a really phenomenal job. I want to thank the Echelon Project Racing League, in particular Eric Hill and Frank Kunda for putting this all together. It's really been an honor for us to be part of it, and I hope we can help continue to grow the platform. It's a great way, I think, to showcase the athletes and give them an opportunity to race in the off season, and it helps our event. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of these athletes come out behind the trainer and get out on the road.
That's what it's all about, supporting our athletes and supporting our events. Frankie, I know you're excited for the next stop on the Echelon Racing League calendar as we head to the Gateway Cup, the virtual Gateway Cup in virtual St. Louis, another classic on the American calendar.
Yeah, a classic on the American calendar. Usually four great races, and the different from St. Francis Park to a bunch of the other downtown area parks. So Gateway Cup's a lot of fun, and I'm sure it's going to be fast because those races don't have usually much elevation gain except for Giro de Montagna, which is only one of the days. Otherwise, we're going to see some massive group sprints, and that's going to be exciting to watch, to be able to see such high speeds.
Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. Frankie, we have got to get training for the announcer and promoter competition that's happening at the Virtual Tour of America's Dairyland at the end of the series. So let's wrap it up there and get some trainer miles in. On behalf of Frankie Andreu, I'm Brad Soner saying thanks for watching today's race at the Echelon Racing League. The Armed Forces Cycling Classic done and dusted. We'll see you at the Gateway Cup January 2nd and 3rd.